Okay, well, thank you very much for coming along today. I'm Matthew Canavan, a Senator for the whole of Queensland, but I'm based here in Rockhampton, and I'm very passionate about seeing Central Queensland get ahead, and I can tell from the turnout today that many of you are too, so we really appreciate you coming along. And I'm going to run through how we're going to run this afternoon, but before I do that, I do want to welcome Josh Frydenberg, who's the new Minister for Resources, Energy and Northern Australia, and he has some particular responsibilities in his particularly Northern Australian portfolio in this water space. We are very lucky to have him here today. He'll be able to stay for around an hour, and then he's got other commitments. We've also, I'd just like to recognise some other guests we've got, or hosts. Michelle and Ken are jointly hosting this with me, so thank you guys. We've also got a number of councillors here, although I think I just saw Bill Ludwig walk in the door somewhere. Oh, g'day, Bill. Thanks for coming along. Margaret Strillo was an apology today, but would have loved to have been here. I think Ron Carriage, the Mayor of Banana, was going to be here. I haven't seen Ron, but... Oh, there you are, Ron. Welcome, Ron. And we've got a number of councillors, including Deputy Mayors Tony Williams and Graham Scott, and I believe we did at least have coming along Neil Fisher, Glenda Mather, Ellen Smith, Rose Swaddling, Adam below, although Adam's an apology actually I now know, and David Snell. Thank you all for coming along. I'd also just finally like to thank Scott Bowman as well, the Vice-Chancellor here at CQU. Thank you for hosting us here today. We are very grateful though for all of you coming out. I think the issues we're going to speak about this afternoon are incredibly important for our collective futures here in Central Queensland, and we are very lucky to have a number of, I think, very knowledgeable speakers about these issues here. We have some representatives of Sunwater who have been doing a lot of work in this area, from Growing Central Queensland, who's an initiative, a joint state and federal funded initiative, and the university as well. And I want to give all of them an opportunity to tell us a bit about what's going on in the Fitzroy Basin. And then we'll have an opportunity for all of us to contribute, and we're really here to listen to you and take your feedback about these particular projects. And before I do introduce some of our speakers to talk, I just want to take this opportunity, while I've briefly got the mic, not as the MC, to say myself, I'm very passionate about seeing things happen in Central Queensland. I think there's enormous potential here. Almost every Australian would know of and immediately have some conception of the Murray-Darling system. It's our nation's food bowl, but probably fewer, and perhaps not even a majority of Australians would know about the Fitzroy Basin where we live, even though the Fitzroy Basin is the second largest water catchment in our nation, just behind the Murray-Darling. So you've got the Murray-Darling and then it's the Fitzroy. But in the Murray-Darling, they've got dams and weirs and water storages that allow them to capture about 80% of their annual flows. So annually, around 33,000 gigs in the Murray-Darling, 80% can be stored each year. Here in the Fitzroy, only less than a third, less than 30% can be stored of our annual flows. I view, at least, that there's enormous potential. The federal government views that there's enormous potential in our country to better use our water resources in an environmentally sensible way, but also to create jobs, investment and agriculture and make our communities get ahead. So thank you once again for coming here today. I am going to try to keep people to time, even though I haven't started on time. We're already running a little bit late, but we want to give everybody the opportunity to speak. So I will ask speakers to try and keep to their allotted time. And first of all, I'd like to welcome Scott Bowman to introduce us and thank you for hosting today. Scott.
Thanks very much, Matt. Sorry, I forgot my glasses. I can't see this very well, but thank you. I'll stick to my 20 minutes, no problem. Look, a very warm welcome to the university. Can I start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we're on today, the Drumbul people, their elders, past, present, and incredibly important to us as a university, the future elders of the Drumbul people. You are very welcome here at the university and to CQUni. We all know that CSIRO pulled out of this building a number of years ago, and really agricultural research went into the doldrums a bit in Rockhampton. We were very pleased to buy this facility, and really it's just been incredible what's been achieved. In a few short years we've emerged as Queensland's #1 agricultural university. We are the highest ranked university in Queensland for agricultural research, and we are starting to produce some really exciting programs in collaboration with our colleagues out at the agricultural colleges at Emerald and Longreach. We're doing incredible work in horticulture and also in precision farming. But of course, none of that really counts for anything unless we've got water to have these agricultural ventures. So water is incredibly important to us. It's fantastic, the passions that it rises in this community, the level of commitment that people have to water and projects around water. And as Matt said, I think if we can get this resource really managed in the best possible way, this is really going to lead for an incredible future for this region as the rest of Asia develops, and we'll be looking for the high quality gourmet agricultural products that this region can provide. So can I wish you all the very best in your deliberations today, particularly welcome and thank the Minister for Northern Australia for coming today, and it's really showing that we are now recognised as part of Northern Australia. So have a great afternoon, and may the fighting begin.
Thanks, Scott.
Actually, I need some water.
Thanks, Scott. Well, as Mark Twain said, yeah, whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting. Hopefully we won't have too much of that here tonight. Could I also introduce and welcome Ken and Michelle, if both of you want to come up and just quickly introduce yourself and set the scene, and then I'll ask Josh as well after them, and we'll get through to our speakers. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Good afternoon, everybody. There's one guy who missed the cut-off, was Richard Hyatt from the Barnaby's office. Is Richard here? Stand up and be counted. Richard, where are you? Stand up. Come on. Well, Richard's in charge of the water department in Barnaby's office. So thanks, Richard, for coming up.
He'll thank you later, Ken.
Yeah, I'm sure he will. No one escapes in this game. Well, we've got less than 2 minutes now, so... But, you know, what my interest in water is the future benefits for Central Queensland. We can grow anything in Central Queensland. We can become bigger than Murray-Darling if we have water and if we have cheap electricity. That's what this country was built on. So that's what I'm interested in, and see what comes out of this meeting this afternoon. But we all know there's a few projects that are being considered. It's a joint venture with the federal government, who we will put in most of the money. The state government will put in some money, and of course we need the expertise of Sunwater and agencies like that will get the whole plan together to make Central Queensland what it could be if we had water. We all know we do get the rainfall, we do get the water, but when it comes at a rush and goes out to sea in a rush. And we all seen floods here since 2008, 2010, 13 and 15, where that exactly what happened. And then we go into long periods of drought with no rain, no water, and we don't realise the value of water until the well runs dry. So that's what we're about today, and I'm pleased that Josh could come up today. Josh, thanks very much. I know you've got a busy schedule, a lot on, and a lot of ground to cover. But you're here, and thank you very much. But it's amazing when you think if there was no water in the Fitzroy River for 9 months, if it didn't have any rainfall coming into our catchment areas like the Dawson, the Comet and the Goa, Rocky would be out of water in 9 months. And that's a lot of facts that a lot of people don't realise. And that's why before 2008, the proposal to put a pipeline, which is still on the drawing boards, to Gladstone, so we can pump either way, I thought was an excellent idea. Not everyone thought that. So that's why we need consensus. We need to be all going in one direction. Thank you for coming. I'm looking forward to the debate this afternoon.
Let's put that down. That's the pleasure of being short. Look, thank you everyone for attending today. We really wanted to put this on because there's been a lot of discussion about water and infrastructure in Rockhampton and Central Queensland. We've got Dominic and his committed crew here who are passionate about the Gap Dam, myself and Ken who are passionate, and Matthew, passionate about getting Edenban and Rookwood up, and also other infrastructure projects on the Fitzroy, including the Connors and also Nathan Dam. So what we want to talk about is the whole the whole Fitzroy system and how we can move forward. It's a pleasure to have Josh here today to talk about this and listen about it, but what we want to see is a united community. So we thought today is a great day that everyone can be civil. We can all talk about our passions about what we want to see happen, but I think the one thing that most of us want is something for Rockhampton and Central Queensland. So I'm sure that we're going to have a lot of discussion today. We've got quite a few experts that are here to talk about it, people that have been working on this a long time. I've been part of the Northern Australia Committee, and I just would have to tell you that when I got elected 2 years ago, these projects were about 150 down the list of the dam projects and river projects for Australia. We've got them up in the top 30 now, and I tell you what, it's been a lot of hard work. So I don't want to see it, go by the way, because there's a lot of people after the same bucket of money. So I think we have to come to a decision about this and all really work towards getting what we can for Central Queensland, because that's what we want. We want a major infrastructure for Central Queensland, and I think that we can get it if we work together. So, look, it's a great honour today to have Josh Frydenberg here. He's the Federal Member for Kooyong and the Federal Minister for Resources, Energy and Northern Australia. And he's come up today as the new Minister for Northern Australia to actually listen to us and talk to us and help us. I always tell them down in Parliament that CQUni is the powerhouse of the nation, and I'll have to include Ken in that too, Flynn as well, just because he's in the room. But anyway, look, I'd like to welcome Josh up, and thank you very much everyone for attending today.
Well, firstly, thanks, Scott, for hosting us here today, and it's wonderful to see so many locals turn up for what it seems to be a very comprehensive and constructive discussion. Matt, thanks for helping to convene today, and of course Michelle and Ken, two very valued colleagues who are great advocates for their regions. I'm the First Minister in a federal government for Northern Australia. And some people might say, hang on, you're a Victorian, what are you doing as the Minister for Northern Australia? Well, the reason, I suppose one of the reasons I was chosen was because I had just been in the role as Assistant Treasurer, and so I had an insight into economic decision making and particularly infrastructure spending and the rigour that needs to be attached to that. So that's part of my background. But also because I don't come from Queensland, I don't come from Western Australia, I don't come from the Northern Territory, I don't come with any particular bias. I'm not against Queensland because I'm a Western Australian, or I'm not against Western Australia because I'm a Queenslander or a Northern Territorian. And so I come to this job with a clear set of eyes. Now, when the Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, asked me to take it on, he said we need an advocate for Northern Australia. He said you've got 40% of Australia's landmass above the Tropic of Capricorn, taking in parts of Queensland, parts of Western Australia and all of the Northern Territory, but you've only got 5% of the population. And you know better than me, you've got a huge endowment of natural resources here. You've got the bulk and the best of Australia's mining and energy. You've got huge opportunities in agriculture and aquaculture. You're on the doorstep of Asia, and you can capitalise on the education and the tourism opportunities that come from the rising middle classes, the urbanisation, the changing demographics that we're seeing in Asia. That is not a once in a generation change that is occurring in Asia. That is once in 200 or 300 year change. And unless you as a region are ready to capitalise on it, you will miss out. And so my job as the Minister is how do we put in place the infrastructure, the energy infrastructure, the water infrastructure, the communications infrastructure, the road, the rail, the transport, the airports, the ports, that type of nation-building infrastructure that invites investment into the regions. And I've just been yesterday in Townsville, the day before in Mackay, tomorrow I'm off to Cairns. And in each of these places, I'm meeting with key stakeholders to hear about what their priority projects are. And I've heard from Michelle about Rookwood and Eden Ban Weirs and what she wants to do in terms of opening up thousands of hectares to agriculture development there. But I know there'll be plenty of other ideas in this room which will be worthy of consideration. Now, we have a white paper for Northern Australia, the first again of its kind, which has more than $1 billion worth of new commitments in it. Beef roads, you would have heard about other roads, feasibility studies for dams, biosecurity and the like. But the centrepiece of this white paper is a $5 billion concessional loan program by the federal government. Now, this $5 billion program will have criteria for the particular projects that it will consider that will be released shortly for public consultation. We'll finalise it thereafter. Then we'll invite suggestions from communities as to which projects they would like to put forward, and then hopefully those projects will be funded from July 2016 onwards. What we're looking for is projects like water, infrastructure, projects in energy, projects in transport, projects in communications, economic infrastructure that otherwise would not go ahead but for the government making a contribution. Now, this is federal government money that will partner with state or territory government or private sector money. This is not a grant, this is a concessional loan. So this is long-term patient capital from the federal government that will go to a piece of economic infrastructure which will eventually be paid back. And we're not seeking to crowd out the private sector, so we're not seeking to fund projects that otherwise the private sector would step in to build. What we're seeking to do is build the necessary infrastructure that the private sector or the government, state and territory, are not in a position today to do themselves. And that will be what we will be seeking to fund going forward. And just finally, I want to say, as a Victorian, I've got another important job in addition to working with all of you. My other important job is to convince people in the south of this country, the other 95% of Australians, why we need to spend federal money in Northern Australia. Because when I do an interview, people say to me, well, why are we spending $5 billion on a concessional loan program in Northern Australia? Can't they stand on their own 2 feet with their own projects and their own capital and their own financing? And I say actually no, because I say that if we get it right in Northern Australia, the beneficiaries will be the whole of the country, because the projects here are actually going to be paying the taxes that will support the hospitals in Melbourne or the roads in Sydney or the defence of our nation. And it is really important to the future of our country that the north of Australia is successful. And as I've been meeting with key stakeholders in Rockhampton, I know it's a tough time. I know the mining boom or commodity cycle has started to slow. Having visited a number of mines, having been now the Minister for Resources, I know that it's not what it was just a couple of years ago. I also know through the cyclone and the drought that it's having an impact here. And with 20+% youth unemployment, it's an urgent, important challenge to create jobs in this area. And so we as a federal government stand ready to do that. And what we want to do is invest in the right infrastructure. When we're spending taxpayers' money, we have to do it in a considered way. But the ideas that come out of this room that are filtered back to Michelle, to Ken and to Matt will actually be the ideas that will come to me and to my department and to the federal government to actually decide what to fund going forward. And finally, this is not a 5-year plan. This is not about what Rockhampton looks like in 5 years' time. This is actually about what does Rockhampton look like in 15 or 20 years' time. How successful are you as an economy capitalising what I see as huge positive opportunities in Asia? So I look forward to listening to you, and obviously to working with your local members to deliver better outcomes for Central and North Queensland. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Josh, and it's great to have you here. It's also great to have you as a champion for Northern Australia, both within Cabinet and in Southern Australia. Your points in that regard are very much right. We need to maintain support across the country for the investments and plans we've got for Northern Australia. Now, I will turn now. We'll have some longer presentations, but we're going to have some presentations from people that have been working on these issues for some time, in particular on projects in the Fitzroy Basin. We're very lucky, and I'm very thankful that Russell Payton is here today from Sunwater. I've been dealing with Russell now for a number of years about projects here in the Fitzroy, and he's always been willing to come up and show us as elected officials around what's going on. And Sunwater are heavily involved in many of the projects here in the Fitzroy Basin. So, Russell, if I could invite you up to say a few words about what Sunwater's doing and where these projects are up at the moment. Thanks, Russell.
Thanks, Matt. And I'm going to rip through this presentation because I'm well aware of the time limit. So, have we got the presentation on PowerPoint? So we might skip to next slide if we can. Can I do that on this? There we go. So I might just provide a bit of a background first. So the Central Queensland Regional Water Supply Strategy was released back in 2006 by the Queensland Government, and it examined the adequacy of water supplies through and across the Fitzroy River Basin, and it indicated demands may be met through the Nathan Dam, the Connors River Dam, the Raising Eden Man Weir and the Rookwood Weir. There was a subsequent policy and the statewide water grid, which approved those projects to be appointed to Sunwater, the Nathan Dam and the Connors River Dam, and also for the Lower Fitzroy project, which is the combined Eden Ban Weir Raising and Rookwood Weir. I'll make it clear that it's Sunwater and Glastonbury Water Board which are joint proponents. So where are these projects? To the south, there's the Nathan Dam, and that's just downstream of Taroom and upstream of Theodore. To the north is the Connors River Dam on the Connors River, which flows into the Fitzroy, and the lower Fitzroy Infrastructure Project, which is the combined Eden Ban Weir Raising, so it's an existing weir, and the Rookwood Weir you can see there as well, which is further upstream. So first I'll just quickly scan through the Nathan Dam. So it would provide long-term water supply within the Surat-Dawson region of Central Queensland. It'd supply water for new customers in addition to providing improved supply performance throughout the Dawson Valley Water Supply Scheme, and in the case of an emergency be able to provide water to the city of Rockhampton. We're just making it clear that we're working with the Queensland Government for Sunwater only progressive projects which are consistent with government expectations and policies. So from our engineering drawings we are able to generate a three-dimensional view of what the Nathan Dam would look like, which you can see there. It's a zoned earth and rockfill dam with a side cut spillway cut into the right abutment. Other facts there, you can see it's got a storage capacity of 888,000 megalitres, which would make it about the fourth largest dam in Queensland, and a yield of 66,000 megalitres per annum, high priority, with an estimated cost of $650 million. So just another view, looking further upstream. I think there's some licence being taken with the colour of the water of the Dawson, but so just to give you an appreciation of the work we've been doing. So to date we've invested in excess of $20 million over the past years since being appointed the proponent for the project, progressing the approvals and investigations to support the Nathan Dam business case. So that's included a raft of activities such as flood modelling, geotechnical investigation, engineering works, cultural heritage, native title, water resource modelling and property purchase negotiations, and importantly the environmental impact statement. I'll just go through a few of those. So geotechnical investigation, we've done a whole raft of testing to prove up the dam site and demonstrate that it's suitable for the site. You can see drilling rigs there. That hole you see in the bottom right-hand corner is what's called a costine, so we've actually exposed the foundation to see what it's like. So based on the site information, we're able to generate what the most appropriate dam type for the site is, which, as I said before, is a zoned earth and rockfill dam with side cut spillway. So obviously hundreds of, quite numerous amounts of drawings developed to justify the arrangement. Whole heap of engineering work associated with optimising the arrangement, looking at not only the dam but also upstream infrastructure. Obviously, an important aspect is these traditional owners. So we've got 6 executed cultural heritage management plans with the relevant Aboriginal parties, and we've also executed an Indigenous land use agreement with each native title claimant. The state has acquired a majority of the land throughout the impoundment area. Importantly, to de-risk the project, obviously is seeking approval for the project, and the Tier 1 approval is obviously the EIS, and you can see there's a pathway through to getting Commonwealth approval, and we're getting close. So we're expecting to finish off our supplementary EIS and have Australian Government approval middle of next year. So once that's completed, we'll finalise our business case, and if the decision's made to proceed, we would then have a period of finalising the like a pre-construction activities, and then construction would occur. I'll briefly talk about Connors River Dam. It's to provide long-term water supply in the Barwon Basin and within the Galilee. It also provides water to the towns of Nebo and Mooroomba, and can be used to release water downstream for irrigators and environmental purposes. So again, based on our engineering drawings, we can generate a 3-dimensional view of what the Nathan Dam of the Connors River Dam looks like. The most suitable dam type for Connors is a roller compacted concrete dam. Storage capacity of 373,000 megalitres and a yield, which provides a yield of almost 50,000 megalitres of high priority yield, with an estimated cost of $585 million. So again, we've spent in the order of $15 million on the business case thus far, doing a whole range of activities. We've actually completed the detailed design. You can see we've built a physical hydraulic model to demonstrate how the dam would perform during a spillway discharge. It's a 1:80 scale within our hydraulics laboratory. So again, engineering's complete. The majority of the property within the inundation area has been purchased. Again, we've got approved cultural heritage management plans with the traditional owners, and we've got an executed ILUA with native title claimants. With the EIS for Connors River Dam, we have gone through the process and have an approved EIS. So we've got a Tier 1 approval to construct the Connors River Dam. But importantly, we've discontinued work on the project due to lack of financial support and commitment from customers, from prospective customers. Now I'll talk about the joint proponency on the Lower Fitzroy Infrastructure Project. So it encompasses both the Edenban Weir and the Rookwood Crossing Weir. So it's a potential development that has a number of options, including raising the existing Edenban Weir to a number of different levels, constructing a new weir at the Rookwood Crossing, again with a number of different levels being considered, and a combination thereof depending on demand drivers. So potential customers we perceive to be agriculture, urban and industrial needs in the Lower Mackenzie, Fitzroy sub-region, so Rockhampton and Gladstone. So where are these pieces of infrastructure? You can see there upstream the proposed Rookwood Weir, and a bit further down in Fitzroy is the existing Edenban Weir. So just some of the statistics of some of the combinations that we've been looking at. If we to raise Edenban Weir for the first stage, it would increase its storage volume to 68,000 megalitres, and for a subsequent stage, by putting on flap gates, it would increase it up to 91,000 megalitres, providing ultimately up to 50,000 megalitres of high priority yield at a cost of about $234 million. The Rookwood Weir, again, we've looked at a fixed crest option and then a subsequent raising with flap gates. Storage capacity of 65,000 initially, or up to 117,000 megalitres, providing a high priority yield of up to 86,000 megalitres per annum, and the cost of around $261 million. So where are we at? So we've been, Sunwater and the Gladstone Area Water Board, we've invested significantly to progress the approvals and investigations. Includes, again, activities such as flood modelling, geotechnical investigations, engineering, cultural heritage, water resource modelling, and the environmental impact statement. So if we look at the environmental impact statement, and again, we've progressed a majority of the way through it over the past significant period. The EIS was published or released in 2015. We're currently compiling additional information to address some of the submissions that were made, and we're expecting Australian Government approval middle of next year. So where does that put us with the time frame? So if that occurs, with the Federal Minister's decision early to mid next year, the timeline from when Sunwater and Gorb's business case is approved and we make a decision to proceed, we'd expect there to be probably 18 months of pre-construction works, and then construction works would proceed. Thank you. Further information on those projects can be found at our website.
Thank you very much, Russell. You've set a great example, almost basically on time, but we really appreciate you coming up to bring us up to speed on those projects. I'd now like to invite Anne Stunzer, who's been working with Growing Central Queensland, a jointly funded state and federal initiative, to look into more detail about the business case and elements of these projects. And Anne, please come forward and have your say. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for attending. There's lots of important people in the room today, and I'm not going to go through the list because I believe the most important people in the room today are the farmers. So thank you for being here. So let's talk a little bit about water. And I don't know if it's psychological, but the minute I start to talk about water, I talk about upstream influences, trickle-down effects, treading water, drip feed information, and downstream effects. So I'm sorry if I start to do that in my presentation today. Now, we've got a pointer and a clicker, we do. Okay, so I just want to acknowledge my funding partners today. So Growing Central Queensland is very much, I have the opposite problem to Michelle, is very much a collaborative agreement or collaborative project between three levels of government. So CQUni, the local councils fund, Regional Development Australia auspices, CQ University, a very valuable partner. Thank you for being here, Professor Bowman. And of course, the Queensland Government pays my wage, more importantly. Okay, so the Fitzroy catchment has been studied extensively. And this is a little bit about our mission, by the way, so we'll skip through that. I'm very aware of my time frame. Fitzroy Basin's been studied extensively. We understand the environmental limits of this system, and we understand the catchment's enormous capacity to deliver water, and at the same time we understand its limitations. We're starting to understand how this system may respond in a climate change scenario, and we're developing responses to the impacts of agriculture on water quality and the reef. As part of this understanding, this map shows existing and proposed water infrastructure as approved and accounted for in the system. This is what Russell was talking about. Does work there. So you've got the existing Fairburn Dam system over here, and we know all the prosperity that's associated with Emerald and what's grown from that. Up here we've got the Connors River Dam, and what's been identified under the Queensland land audit around the Mackenzie Big Bend area is around 60,000 hectares of productive land suitable for high-value agriculture. Down the bottom here we have the proposed Nathan Dam, as mentioned and modelled, and the Dawson River agricultural corridor of identified lands. And around here we have Edenban and Rookwood Weirs, as discussed also by Sunwater. And I wanted to thank Sunwater for coming and also for clearly pointing out that the Nathan Dam will produce 66,000 megalitres of high priority. The Connors will produce around 58, if I thought my notes properly. Rookwood alone will produce 86,000 megalitres of water for around a third to a quarter of the price. The vision of growing Central Queensland is to develop water infrastructure across the whole catchment in conjunction with available arable land. There's no point having water if you can't use it anywhere. So of the three water infrastructure options, growing Central Queensland promotes, through all our sponsors and our partners, Edenban and Rookwood Weirs its priority. Why is this? Now this map is a map of all the amazing soils on the Fitzroy, and I used to be a little bit in love with this map until our office manager pointed out that it actually looks like someone's intestinal tract, so I can no longer look at it again quite the same way. So why Edenban and Rookwood? There's an EIS to be approved federally and at a state level in March 2016 as indicated by Sunwater. The average EIS process takes around 8 years, so we're at the pointy end. The Weirs will increase security for Rockhampton and Livingstone's urban and industrial water supply, and in times of severe drought, via a pipeline, the allocation will also provide security for Gladstone's urban and industrial users via the construction of this pipeline. It's got a minimal environmental footprint, and the inundation is primarily restricted to bed and bank. On top of the urban and industrial water security from Edenban and Rookwood, within the EIS there is an allocation of high priority water for agriculture. This is the only current proposed water infrastructure proposed in the Fitzroy Basin with this capacity. The others would have to retrospectively apply for it. So you can build Nathan and Connors, but you can't irrigate with it right now. So this is Edenban and Rookwood, and this is where your water will be allocated and sourced from. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the agricultural production that comes out of Edenban and Rookwood, and I won't bore you with the extensive calculations by Gleeson and Nash, but what they say is they attribute a value per gigalitre of water. So after we've supplied Gladstone and after we've supplied Livingstone, we roughly have around 112,000 megalitres available for irrigation of high priority water. The value per gigalitre is between 500,000 and 1.2 million per gigalitre, so we're looking at around $56 to $134 million per annum increase in agriculture for broadacre crops, and at the high end of the scale we're looking at around $1.124 billion for high value agriculture as a result of the water. It ensures water security, as I've mentioned. We're looking on the data based on the FIS, which was done in 2008, and I believe John Grimes is here and Angus Russell that worked on that. We're looking at in excess of 2,100 new jobs for the region. The multiplier is estimated at 3 times the value of that agricultural production, so boarding school fees, getting your ute serviced, going to the coast for the weekend, and it's palatable with federal government funding models. And for me, it's environmentally friendly. It's part of an overall water investment for the catchment. So the federal government, thank you for being here, Minister, by the way, is establishing a $500 million National Water Infrastructure Fund for Farmers' Future Water. Of that, $450 million goes toward actually building this water infrastructure. There's also a $5 billion long-term low-interest loan available through 2 states, possibly in councils, to invest in water infrastructure as well. And I think it probably will be an either-or. It won't be both with respect to accessing funds. If the total fund is $500 million, $450 actually million, do you think the federal government is going to put its entire fund into one piece of water infrastructure in all of Northern Australia? So when we look at the cost for us, whilst we do want to see Nathan and Connors built in the longer term, right now, in terms of the investment opportunity from the federal government, the price attached to Rookwood or Edenban and Rookwood together is palatable with respect to accessing that fund. So this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity. It's been 40 years since we've had any water infrastructure built in Central Queensland. And as Michelle touched on, if we're not united in our approach to accessing this water infrastructure and funding available around it, we will miss out and it will go somewhere else. So it's very important that we have this debate today. It's timely with respect to the EIS and project readiness, and Edenban and Rookwood will provide sustainable, I'm just going to call it Edenbrook because that would be a lot easier in terms of getting it out, will provide sustainable long-term water security for urban and industrial communities, Rockhampton, Capricorn Coast and Gladstone. So potentially As touched on before, we have 8 months water supply in this catchment if it doesn't rain. So you've got 220,000 people with no water, potentially. It's very important we build water infrastructure now. Edenban and Rookwood will provide long-term agricultural growth and prosperity for the region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anne, and thanks for all the work you have done on these projects. I'd now like to invite Dominic, and I'd also like to pay credit and tribute to Dominic as well, who's probably done more than any of us in this room to promote water development in our region. And I do recognise we'll have different views about what we need to do to capture and store and increase value in this area, but I do want to pay credit for Dominic for all the promotion activities in particular he's done, because I actually don't think we probably would have had the turnout we've had today without people like Dominic banging the drum about how important it is to do this for our region. So thanks for being here, Dominic, and over to you, mate.
Right, I'd like to thank Josh for coming today. Only someone from Victoria would start in Mackay and go to Townsville, come back to Rocky and head back up to Cairns.
There's a story to that.
My family has lived in this fantastic regional city for 5 generations. 80 years of this was spent in retail and wholesale horticulture. I have seen, as we all have, that Rockhampton is not reaching its full potential. When the levee bank was being discussed, someone brought up the Fitzroy Gap as a means of flood mitigation, as the state government had considered the gap in 2010 as a means of flood mitigation. Really what got my attention was the idea was given its first significant endorsement by none other than Dr. John Bradfield, one of Australia's most eminent and successful visionaries and engineers. When I looked at the scale of what Bradfield proposed, the idea went from being a flood mitigation option to a water security project delivering thousands of jobs and an economic injection for our region. In 1976, the State Government Irrigation and Water Supply Commission did a major feasibility study, including costings. The site was deemed suitable for a mega dam. However, it didn't go ahead due to landholders of the area not agreeing to it. In the major drought in the mid-2000s, a CQ water supply strategy paper was done by the Minister at the time, Craig Wallace, who committed the sitting state Labor government to the following: raising Edenban Weir, constructing Rookwood Weir, developing the Connors Dam, designing and construction of the Nathan Dam, and building the pipeline line from Rockhampton to Gladstone. All these commitments, most of them were to be completed by 2015, as projections for water demand from urban, industrial, mining, agriculture suggested there would be a severe shortfall by 2020. Here we are in 2015, not one of these projects looks like happening. In recent comments, the state government has said the state government would not be funding any part of the weirs. So the state government has taken a step backwards since 2005. In present format, there is no allocation, but Anne said there is, from Rookwood Weir. How much is allocated for agriculture out of Rookwood Weir? 40 to 50,000 megalitres at high priority. I don't, fair enough. Governments of the country need to reconsider their cost-benefit analysis approach, because desalination plants across the country have wasted billions of dollars with zero benefit. For example, the one built in Melbourne in 2009 will have cost the Australian taxpayers $18 billion by 2040, even if not one drop of water comes through it. You hear what I said? 18 billion, not million, 18 billion. When I was at the National Infrastructure Summit in Sydney in June, the Victorian Treasurer said to the audience that this desalination plant had now drought-proofed the state. At a maximum production of only 150 gigalitres a year, stage 1 of the gap is 2,000 gigalitres. How could an extra 150 gigalitres drought-proof an entire state? The $18 billion waste would cover the cost of the Gap, the Connors and Nathan dams. Imagine the economic return from 3 dams would have provided for Australia's future generations, far more than the desalination plant. The Fitzroy River catchment is the second largest catchment in Australia, with 70% of the water volume of the Murray-Darling, which has 34,000 gigalitres of water storage. Currently, we don't even have 2,000 gigalitres of water storage on the Fitzroy. The beauty of the Fitzroy Gap is that even up to stage 3, there are only 37 landholders to liaise with, in one of the few natural sites for a dam in Australia. Any nation-building project is not going to come without sacrifices and inconveniences. But Australia has moved forward before. In the 1960s, the township of Jindabyne was relocated due to the Snowy Mountain scheme. CQ has all the infrastructure needed to support and construct a nation-building project that will deliver agriculture, tourism, hydroelectricity, flood mitigation and water security. Most importantly, I applaud the fact that different people are putting forward their big ideas for the future of Rockhampton. But the reason why the Fitzroy Gap stands alone, way ahead of the pack, is that it is the only project that would provide Rockhampton with a competitive advantage that few other cities could replicate. Any city in Australia could be the Garden City, the Smart City, the Cafe City, the Green City, the City of Culture, or the River City. Any city can have a stadium or a convention centre, but no other single city has Australia's second largest river catchment at its back door. One which could provide water security required to have a global agricultural production hub. This would truly set Rockhampton apart from other cities in Australia. Further, this project, alongside a well-executed agricultural plan, would make Rockhampton a global city. Upon attending the Global Food Forum in Melbourne in March and the National Infrastructure Summit in June, the message is loud and clear. International money wants to invest in Australian agriculture and infrastructure. Canadian and US pension funds are searching for investment lending opportunities. They want to provide minimum loans of $500 million with terms of up to 25 to 30 years. As borrowers, Australia could retain ownership of this nation-building project. The next step is to claim our share of the $500 million that the government's white paper has committed to facilitating greater investment in water infrastructure. The Fitzroy Gap deserves serious consideration, and the first step is having the 1976 feasibility study updated, so the potential to have Australia's second largest river catchment can be realised. Where is our next Ben Chifley to deliver a nation-building project? Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dominic. And now I just wanted to invite, there's a couple of people who are graziers and have worked on some of these issues to come forward and share some of their insights. First, Charlie Wilson, if you'd like to come forward, and then we might go straight to Roger Toole after you, Charlie. Thanks.
Probably don't need a drink for 5 minutes, do I? Thank you very much, Matt. Appreciate the introduction. Yeah, it's really exciting that we're all here today to talk about water infrastructure in this region, you know, and I'd like to take our hat off to our local politicians for flying the flag for CQ. I think it's great, you know. It certainly is a real opportunity to lever off what we've already done here to make this an agricultural powerhouse, and I must agree with what's been said. You know, this area has an enormous amount of work, enormous amount of potential. We operate a breeding herd of about 1,200 cows, and we grow MSA bullocks on Lakina, irrigated, and grow about 1,000 acres irrigated cotton and dryland crops up at Carramar in the subcatchment of the Mackenzie. So my wife and I have been farming for 35 years now, a bit scary, isn't it? So we use irrigation on our land quite a lot. We've come up a long way through the mill, so to speak, to do it properly. Some photos there of the farm coming up there now. We're also tinkering with organic grains at the moment, so we can see that as a high value crop that we can grow. So we'll be putting in a pivot there, in 250 acre pivot there, just to see if we can manage that as well. So it's a bit hard when you've been cut from 10 to 5 to squeeze it all in. But irrigation has always been part of central Queensland farming, as we all know, back to the Nathan. There's been some amazing success stories and quite a lot of failures, and I want to talk about both just so that people understand that it's not easy. The successes I rate highly are 2PH farms, obviously out at Emerald, and the orchards out there, the whole cotton scene on a smaller scale, but equally successful are the herb farmers in the Calloid and the macadamia farmers who are just starting at Emerald. So we've got a really diverse group there. Successful farming, how does it happen? Like anything else, to be successful, you've got to start with a clear vision, a professional approach, a plan, researching markets and having the resources required. To start any business venture without that, you're really asking for trouble. If you look at those crops I mentioned and the successful people, you can see that they're all going to highest and best use of the water. These days, the days of irrigating low return crops for grass or whatever are gone. The pumping costs and electricity costs we talked about just make it impossible. So to be a successful farmer, I believe, you must target high returning crops, research soils, climates and markets, be skilled and well resourced, and target costs at every level. Things got a bit tough for us recently, and we went through our budgets and we just carved every input, and it's amazing. If you keep hammering away at those costs, you just got to keep working on that. I always do feel sorry for unsuccessful farmers. They work hard, battle away, and some have the right skills and plans, but just plain bad luck, you know. We see it time and time again. But to come into this industry with dreams, no skill, and thinking that you're going to get a water allocation as a licence to print money, that's not going to happen. I know all this because in the 80s we nearly went broke the same way. And just a word of caution about Northern Australia. None of us want to see the situation in Northern Australia, what has happened in most irrigation schemes, where 50% of the farmers go through the heartache of going broke because they don't have those skills. So I think we've got to be really important in any irrigation development, make sure that we've got everything in place so that those farmers get a fair go. So looking at the Fitzroy, I believe the Fitzroy is a perfect place for more water development compared to other areas in Northern Australia, which I'll call frontier areas. The climate of central Queensland is ideal for so many enterprises, close enough to get the southern Australia influences to grow prime hard wheat and winter crops, but north enough to grow bananas and a full range of tropical fruits and horticulture. As one farmer commented that to me, that there's not many places around that can do that. Looking at the soils report, there's certainly enough soils in the lower Fitzroy to develop very viable horticulture and vegetable industry. Finding a lot of suitable soils for broad acre irrigation, large areas could be a bit harder, but I'm not an expert in that field, so I'm not going to comment on that. But you probably do need some sort of funding for an irrigation type scheme to get one of those big broad acre areas up, and I don't think government's very interested in that. Further up the catchment, of course, there's huge areas available now for broad acre crops as well as horticulture. And one area that I must give a plug to, well, not the ABC, I think I can give a little plug for our area.
Thank you, Charles.
We've been working in the Big Bend area for a number of years, trying to get infrastructure and development up there, so I'll do my plug. In most conventional water schemes, I believe in the past there's been 4 types of farmers. The new entrants to the area who'll come with the water prices low, and they'll have a clear objective of what they want to do. They'll buy land and water. They may have an operation in another area, and they'll be very skilled. There'll be a few local followers looking over the fence as well. These guys will be watching what they do, and they'll follow along. There'll be some who add water to their existing enterprise and grow hay and forage and that sort of thing. But there'll be some who just buy the water and sit on it. So let's think a little bit outside the square. I heard Wyatt Roy speaking on the radio the other day. I tell you what, he's an impressive young man for his age. He's 23, 25. Well, whatever. He's amazing. He's got a real grip of what he wants and where he wants to take Australia. So I was really impressed. He's got grand plans in his new role with innovation. I thought, why can't we get a little bit innovative with this water? Why have we got to do all these things like see farmers go broke and go through that, what I just talked about, having people watching over the fence? We need all that, but I think we've got to get a little bit more innovative in what we do. What we got here is a mature farming community with emerald and all the crops that are going on, and further down the Fitzroy, the farmers down here doing horticulture. So we've got a mature farming community who can grab this water, a region that's got great infrastructure, as we know. We've got people, institutions, universities and schools that are innovative. We've got a globe that needs food, a country that has high reputation for clean and green, high water security, favourable climate. And why can't we have a government encourage innovation through incentives? We need to get together, get these smart people in the room and pick their brains and find out what's going to grow here, how we're going to do it, and get the government behind us. Innovative ideas to make things happen. And you need to sit down and workshop it out, but land and water grants over long periods, engaging overseas partners to take Central Queensland products, long-term low-interest loans. I mean, they're all the same old ones, but I'm sure there's other ones out there. But the one that keeps jumping out at me is fast-tracking approvals for things. We always seem to get held up doing stuff. So now I'd like to just mention the feedlot quickly. The Queensland government has for some years been trying to get this development up and running. I find it really hard to understand why it hasn't happened. Why has this feedlot not taken off? We've got everything here for it. So I think we need to re-look at that before the water's announced and try and find out why this feedlot hasn't gone, because the feedlot for Central Queensland in this lower part of the catchment would be just unbelievable. It would be a boom for everybody. Cattle producers would have a feeder market to send cattle to. At present, we're on about 10% discount to southern markets. Grain producers would have a major output for grain. Based on southern Queensland, we're at the moment getting about a $40 a tonne discount because of the freight. All our grain's based on the downs. If we can just get that big feedlot up, the grain price would come up accordingly, and that'd be great for the whole area. So my message is we've got to get smart, put these incentives in place, lower the disincentive, get rid of the disincentives. The feedlot, I think, probably didn't get up because there was all these roadblocks put in front of people, like turn-offs the highway and would cost $1 million, and get all that stuff done. And let's get on with it and build the thing and get producing. In conclusion, the Fitzroy Basin has, in my opinion, experienced farmers who are active in irrigation farming, farmers who know what grows and what won't grow, a road rail network that can handle more capacity, 3 ports, close proximity, Gladstone, Port Alma and Mackay, existing grain, cotton and cattle export facilities, Rockhampton, Mackay and Emerald as major service centres. So let's make Central Queensland an agricultural innovation zone with this water as a catalyst. Thank you.
Roger, you can come straight up and keep going. Thanks, mate.
Thank you, everybody. My name's Roger Toole. The first thing I'd just like to mention is that I'm not a water expert. I'm just a local fellow that's observed what's gone on in this area since I've lived here for the last 37 odd years. And I was fortunate in my previous career to be able to fly around this country in a light aircraft and extensively throughout Australia, but more importantly, a very large amount of time spent in Queensland and outback and the far outback throughout this country, and particularly this state. And everywhere that I travelled throughout the last 33 years that we ran our business, that involved me travelling around the country, the it was very, very easy to see where there was a good productivity taking place on the land in relation to primary production, because there were big, large areas of green country, and that comes about because of people being able to utilise water. And I think when I first came to Queensland back in 1978, it was just near the end of the year and the early part of the following year, and everything was very, very green. And on previous visits that I'd been up this way on holidays, it was the same thing. It was always green. And I realised after I'd been here for about 12 months that changes rapidly after the end of the wet season. And then we gradually go browner and browner and browner, and occasionally we end up with all these droughts, and they produce a fair amount of heartache to a lot of people, not just out on the land, but in the towns and retailers, and it has a ricocheting effect. So water in Queensland, particularly in this particular region, is of great importance, that we need to try and have water security, not just for particular projects, but for the general lifestyle as well. It's clearly evident that large water storage facilities provide water security, and this in turn generates confident development in a particular region, and be it primary production and or industry growth, which in turn leads to jobs and population growth. And by water security, I mean not just the fact that you've got a river sitting there that has got a big flow. Water security comes from having the capacity to continue to supply that water when you do have droughts and long periods of dry. It's not just the fact that the river's sitting there, it's a matter of having some of that water coming off stream to cater for the periods of time when there is no rain. And that's water security is gauged by the amount of water capacity that you have that is there sitting in storage for those dry times. And all of these benefits, the water security is one of the things that will lead to greater prosperity in this country. We have the resources going past us in this town. As people have mentioned on numerous occasions that I've been listening to today, we have the second largest volume of fresh water flowing into the ocean, going right past our door every year. As I said, we live in a very arid country and need to be conscious of water conservation. But we also have various areas in Australia that have some great river systems that provide the lifeblood to our nation, like the Murray-Darling system and the Ord River Scheme. I'll just touch briefly on the Ord River Scheme. I've been to the Ord River Scheme twice in the last few years, and there's a little town near the Ord River Scheme called Kununurra, and Kununurra was actually developed because of the Ord River Scheme, and it's probably one of the major tourist destinations in this country now for people that travel to Western Australia. And on 2 occasions that I've been there, the place has been absolutely packed out with tourists because they want to go and have a look at the Ord River Scheme and go out on the Argyle Dam, which is the main storage area. And it's an absolutely incredible sight to see it, and the actual offshoot, apart from anything to do with the primary production and growing things because they got the water, it's a tremendous tourist activity. It brings a lot of money to that area, and it's actually generated growth of the town of Kununurra and also tourism in Western Australia. And the same thing can happen here in central Queensland if we go about water storage and utilisation the right way. I've touched on the river systems, and the Fitzroy right here is with the where we live is a natural site for a natural site for a large dam at the Fitzroy Gap, which was originally identified by that great visionary Dr. Bradfield in the 1940s. Unfortunately, this great asset has not been harnessed to provide what has already been established by others, apart from Dr. Bradfield, as the best dam site, and that's a bit of a pun there, as the best dam site option for a large, secure water supply for central Queensland. And I'm talking about a dam, I'm not talking about weirs, I'm talking about a dam site. Large dams like the Wivenhoe Dam, the Burdekin Falls Dam, the Fairburn Dam provide water security for any sort of, most situations that may develop, including severe droughts. One of the problems, unfortunately, in Gladstone is that the Awonga Dam is a really nice dam, and it provides good water security for Gladstone and the industrial growth and the urban population. but it also has a very small catchment area, and several years ago it got very light on for actual water, and the capacity was way down, and that's why the Gladstone Area Water Board and Sunwater are seeking another source of water for Gladstone, because the catchment area for the Awonga Dam is not a very large one and doesn't provide the required water security that they're looking for that area. And I don't blame Gladstone Area Water Board or Sunwater for trying to seek that water. They need to do it, and it's something that we all should be looking at as well. Various studies at various times continue to identify the Gap Dam site as the best option for a large secure water supply in Queensland. The Rookwood Weir I've just mentioned was promoted by Gladstone Area Water Board because of the low water at the time, and they need to have some sort of water security. Same thing happens with the Eden Ban Weir. The Eden Ban Weir proposal at this stage is to provide additional water security for Rockhampton and Livingston Shire councils, and also for Stanwell Power Station. And I understand that there is some allocation out of those two proposals that will provide some water for agriculture and primary production in this region. But unfortunately, the building of the Rookwood will only solve potential problems in Gladstone, and the same thing happens with the Eden Band. It's solving a potential problem of actual water security for those people that I've identified, and there is a small allocation after that would be available for agriculture. And I think that I just touch on a comment that was made earlier by the Minister, that what we're looking at, what the government are looking at is a 15 to 20 year vision, not a 5-year vision. I had a look at some population growth figures, and at the moment, just to give you an idea, the population is currently rising at 1.4% annually in this country. If you project that out for 10 years, the population growth from where we are to then would be 15%. It would increase from 23,714,000 odd people by 15% and that's over 3.6 million people. In 10 years' time, that's what the projected population growth is going to be. So when we're talking about once in a lifetime opportunity for water security, we should be really looking at what the Minister mentioned before, which is a vision that is going to provide something for 15 to 20 years in advance, not just in the immediate future. And that's why I personally, as I said, I'm not a water expert, but I've had a look at a lot of different things in this country, and I've been over that Gap Dam site so many times, and I always used to say to myself, what a great site for a dam. And then suddenly, there's been quite a bit of discussion about it, and I've had a further look at it, what I'd like to see happen with the Gap Dam is that we actually look at the government doing an updated feasibility study on the Gap Dam site. Now, there's already a lot of work being done throughout this, in this state, with feasibility on the Fitzroy catchment area, with Eden Ban and Rookwood and Natham and Connors, and a lot of the things are common ground to all of them. I believe that there is an opportunity that we shouldn't miss, and we should actually look at the Gap Dam site to consider whether or not it is a better proposition to put money into something like that now, which is going to give us the opportunity to that 15 to 20 year vision, rather than something that might be a short-term fix in the meantime with some of the other things. I'm not saying that people are wrong seeking their water, not for 1 minute. I think that's something that it's good to see that suddenly we're going to do something about water security. But we need to be looking further ahead than 5 years. We need to be looking at a much bigger picture. I think Charlie just mentioned before, the opportunities are here in central Queensland to actually, and the expertise is here. If you look at what happens at Fairburn Dam and the Burdekin and the farmers that are around this area, that there is enough expertise. One of the things that farmers are not going to do... Oh, okay. Right, yeah. I'll just touch on this. One of the things farmers are not going to do is go and spend millions and millions of dollars on producing multi-million-dollar farming operations if they haven't got water security. Because if it's not decided, it hasn't been determined that there's enough water security, they're not going to spend the money. Yeah, okay. I'm aware it's going to cost a bit more money, but I don't think finding the money to build the Gap Dam will be a problem. The money is available in this world, and I even think that some of the money is available in this country, even if it didn't come from the government, to build something that would give us a much better opportunity into the future. And I think that's what we really need to consider. I'm asking that it be considered. That's all. And stage 1, not up to stage 3. Stage 1 gives us 2 million megalitres. Bigger than Wivenhoe, not quite as big as Burdekin Falls, and nearly double the size of Fairburn. But we have the people in the area that know what to do with it if it's there. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Roger, and sorry to wind you up there. I do want to give everyone an opportunity to speak later. We have one more speaker and then we'll break for afternoon tea. We've got John Rofe from the CQ University. Thank you for coming here to give more of an economic input to our discussions. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Matt. I'm an economist here at the university, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about the numbers and just provide a bit of different perspective. I think in terms of advancing these proposals that have been talked about, there are 3 really big issues to address, and it's better to address them head on than... Sorry, I'll talk a bit closer to this thing. Matt's obviously able to get it right at the time. 3 big issues to address, and the first one is going to be the cost. So if you look at the quick numbers that Russell put up before and you divide them out, you can see that these dams are going to cost roughly about $5,000 to $10,000 per megalitre. And that's a huge challenge for agriculture because realistically it's pretty tough in agriculture. Water trades roughly at about $2,000 a megalitre. It's very hard to make the numbers stack up exactly for agriculture. I don't think it's all bad. I don't think that is necessarily insurmountable. The great thing that we've got is a lot of potential for growth and a lot of potential for growth in export markets. Just last week we saw the first of live cattle being taken by air for China, and China's looking, with the free trade agreement, looking to take to up to 1 million cattle a year. So in 10 years, I think there's a major new market that will open and a market that will deliver a lot more dollars. The difficulty is trying to predict exactly what this is. At the moment, I think that it's very difficult to make any dam in Australia economic on terms of just for agriculture. And what we need to look for is what are going to be the economics of what it is, not what it is now, but of what it will be in the future. So trying to predict where our region is going to have some competitive advantages and be able to do the cost benefit on that basis is very important and will be crucial to selling this. I think, so parking that to one side, the second big issue that we need to deal with is what are the strategic benefits. And this is where, in this region, Rockhampton is very lucky that it's close to Gladstone. There are a number of big strategic issues that I think are actually we can turn to our advantage in this case. So one of them is that in Rockhampton and Gladstone, as Anne pointed out before, there are some requirements for water beside agriculture. And those other sectors tend to be interested in high security water, able to pay a lot for it, and provide a base case for demand. So that really helps to provide the economic case. There are a few other things that's really important. Charlie, I think, touched on skills before, on knowledge. If you're talking about Northern Australia, this area here, the Fitzroy and Mackay regions, account for 1/3 of the agricultural production in Northern Australia. So, and we have most of the infrastructure here, we've got a lot of the farmers here, a lot of the skills. It's relatively easy to grow from this base, much, much more difficult to establish, say, new irrigation areas, new agricultural zones in the far north and make them pay. So we've got a lot of competitive advantage about growing in this case here. And I think those are things that we really should focus on, building our strategic case for growing the area, as well as focusing on the agricultural potential. The third issue, though, I think is the the most difficult to address, and that's the environmental impacts. And this is going to be where I think it's very important to be upfront about this and try to be very clear about what the issues will be and what the trade-offs are. In essence, any irrigation development, any water storage development, it's very difficult to sell to the broader community because of concerns about the environmental impacts. And those impacts are multiple. There's the loss of flow and the impacts on the natural flow regimes. There's the impacts of water being stored in impoundments. And of course, if you get large dams, you've got a loss of that vegetation area. So all of those can be major impacts. One of the things that I've looked at, we did some work several years ago when there was the first water plan developed for the Fitzroy, and we actually ran surveys of people in central Queensland, Rockhampton, Emerald, and also Brisbane, and we asked them about the trade-offs. So how do they see the trade-offs between allocating more water out to irrigation, losing some of the biodiversity through storages in streams, losing some of the vegetation areas, and offsetting that, of course, with growth in jobs and growth in agriculture. And there is a point at which people will view the trade-offs as being acceptable. So I think if there are limited environmental losses and lots of jobs, that's something that on average people are willing to support. But of course, if there's major environmental losses, not so many jobs in it, that's a much more difficult thing to get community support for. So just on my figures that are very now outdated, they're more than 10 years old, but we've assessed the environmental cost of, say, Eden and Rookwood at roughly about $10 million. This is what the community, that's what the value of the loss would be to the community of having that. So it means you've got to then come up and show that offsetting that are the gains in the jobs, the gains in the flow-on effects into the local community, and the increased profitability in agriculture. So these are all cases that can be mounted. As we go to larger schemes, there's larger environmental losses. Those numbers rise very quickly, and the case, I think, for showing that the developments can be supported by the community, the case becomes much harder. So those are the three key challenges. First one is to come up with some returns from agriculture that are going to justify the costs of building the impoundments. That's not easy. The second is to sell the strategic advantage. I think we have a lot of potential wins here. We've got great infrastructure. We're close to a major airport. We're in a region where there's a lot of skills. We've got other demands, particularly with Rockhampton and Gladstone, that help to underpin the case. And third, we have some knowledge about what the environmental impacts are, and we have projects that we can select from. We have a wonderful advantage here. We've got a number of projects, and we can try to select the ones that are going to minimise the environmental losses in a way that can generate some community support.
Thanks very much, John, and thanks to all of our speakers. We might just quickly break. We'll try and keep it brief. So if we could try and start reconvening at, say, 20 to 4. There's some coffee and tea at the back, so just under 10 minutes if people would try and keep it to. So we give people an opportunity to discuss all the issues. Thank you.
No, well, we haven't met Russell. Jared Conrad, we meet him.
Jared, how are you? You mentioned. You on one of the adjacent land holders, are you?
Yeah, I'm right at Don't go around there on your own. Well, you know what? In the rocks. Photograph a track. Female at the wheel. We've seen the males walking around.
I'm sorry, I'm interested. John asked me one question about Jane Cho. I'm really sorry. Because I met you once and I went, who's this really pleasant man that's smiling at me? Surely I know.
Jared Conrad, big man.
So I don't know. Can you go and meet him? How much has he
He's a nice man.
Ricky Man in a World Cup suit.
Or even being where catchment areas. Ready to buy any water or agriculture. No. There's a big cavities under there, isn't it? Water under these hills. Did you ever write a report? Yeah, he was on scene. Always remember that.
It's quite cheap though. Well, sorry, it's expensive. You mean that's in their dollars, like back in the 30s?
This would have been the price would have been done at around 40 cents. Time value of money. Yeah, really. There you go, Scotty. Yeah.
Yeah, Mike was my name. I'm from Natural Resources and Mines. Yeah, good, thanks. I'm actually the manager of the Dam Land Management unit. Yeah. So I was interested to hear you talk on. Actually, I had a bit of a chuckle. You skipped over the land acquisition thing is pretty quick. Actually, the one you said on Connors, I think you said you'd spent 15 mil and included land acquisition. I actually had another 85 onto that. Yeah, well, including that. I'll try to be specific. I don't know what and how's things going? I guess sitting in the holding pattern at the moment. Like obviously money's we're day-to-day struggle with seeds. Regrow. Yards falling down, fences, and no one's spend money fixing them up. But the first thing we look at is the footprint. It's a footprint of the roll. It's our side of the footprint. Two of the fellas around here this week. Connors one's going all right as far as the land numbers go. We had a couple of the original people working on. We've got actually 10 little jobs there, and we've got new people in there really going ahead with priority jobs to make they still see that they've got an opportunity to make some dough out of it.
I'll sit up next to you. Let's say you found me to identify. Hey? I didn't do it.
Is that friendly about it? Yeah.
Yeah, we'll take this one. Leave that one. These people are more important than those people.
Basically, everyone remembers you after your speech. They need to ask you a question, they can't remember your
Hello,
name.
can everyone please be seated, please?
Thanks, Dominic. Just waiting for. Do you know where Roger is? Is there another seat there? Or are you...
Can everybody please take a seat and we'll get started again? Thank you.
Roger, you're a politician. I reckon you sounded that good, you're with the politician.
Oh, you're on this side, mate.
Where am I sitting?
All right. might kick back off again. Still a few outside, but that's okay. Apologise, we're running a little bit over time, as always these things go. But I know all of our speakers and the MPs can stick around till 5, so we can go a bit later. If people need to go earlier, that's obviously perfectly fine and understandable. We're just going to really open it up now. It's an open mic. We have a couple of roving mics. As I said earlier, we want to hear from you. We want to be here to listen. There's many people in the room I've been speaking to over a tea and coffee who are very knowledgeable, and I'd be really interested to hear their views in this session. We do have our speakers up here on a panel, so if there are any questions that people want to raise, you're welcome to do that. But if you just want to make a comment, that's perfectly fine too. We might, as people are thinking about what they want to say, I have invited Ron, the Mayor of Banana Shire, to say a few words, and I think Bill Ludwig, who's out on the phone, he might also make a short contribution, and then we'll just go to the floor. So, Ron, thanks, mate.
Thanks, Matt. Ken, Michelle's here somewhere. Everyone, I suppose I want to speak for two parts, Mayor of Banana Shire and also Chair of the CQUni. One of the things that I was recently out with Ken and other members of the federal government out at Colin Dunn's and Ross Hutchinson's place, and one of the things that jumped out to me was the fact that we've got to encourage the expertise that we have here regarding the agricultural sector to expand and look at how they can improve their value adding. And without water, we can't do anything. From the CQUni's point of view, we have our two major projects, which is Edenban and Rookwood Weirs, followed by Nathan and the Connors. So, I mean, the whole point of it is we can't, I think it's been explained here today, we can't do anything without water and water security. But the whole, again, we need to encourage our producers and encourage everyone that's got a value add. It's no use just putting up a case and saying we want a dam. We've got to show how we can produce that extra income. Can I say thank you to Anne. Anne's our main spokesperson and pusher of growing CQ. Another incentive, just showing how the agricultural sector is so important to Central Queensland as a whole. The final point I'd just like to make is that although we're below and I'm below the Tropic of Capricorn, we've lobbied both the state government and the federal government. We are now included in the Northern Australia program. So we are part of this whole thing. We are part of being able to ask for the funding to develop the infrastructure that we need. So we are in this whole game together. But I encourage everyone, with the projects in Central Queensland, we have the most shovel-ready projects probably in all of Australia. So we need to all get behind them and push them as hard as we can for the betterment of the whole of Central Queensland as a whole. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Ron. Bill, you're just out of the room, but I was also introduced to you at the same time. Did you want to say a couple of words? And we'll move to the floor.
Great.
Folks, it's great that we're in this position. I remember back in 2002 when state government was talking about an emergency pipeline to Gladstone, and at that juncture of time in Central Queensland we had every WAMP, water allocation management plan, every river operational plan, but we had no plan for infrastructure. And it was good to see that Ed Donohue's in the room, because with Ed and the councils and Livingston was very proud to be the host for the first meeting. We had one of the first infrastructure plans in Queensland, well in advance of the southeast corner. So we're well positioned to move forward. There's been a lot of champions, and we've got a wealth of information. Got to make sure that the dollars stack up, but at the same time we need to make sure that we don't miss this opportunity. Those dollars are not going to stick around forever. We're not necessarily going to have a federal government that is focused on putting the infrastructure in place. But I can say one of the positive things is the Premier called all the Northern Queensland mayors, and it's great that they're positioned in somewhere. We used to be in the middle and nowhere. We weren't in the southeast corner, we weren't in the north. So with this plan, we're in there for the dollars. We need to make sure that we don't miss this opportunity. So she called that a couple of weeks ago when we were up for the Destinations Q in Townsville. We've got the Northern Australia Summit in November. We need to make sure that all tiers of government are focused and all sectors are focused to make sure we don't miss this boat on with Michelle. We need to actually put a united face and a firm foot forward on this one, and maybe the gap is going to be a second project. There's a couple ready to go, and I think, you know, from a personal perspective, I need to make sure that, well, I think we all need to make sure we don't miss that train. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. So it's over to you now. We have a couple of mics. I've got another former mayor here, Lee, who wants to go first. So Lee, you can go first, but others who want to contribute, just put your hands up and we'll try and get to everyone. Lee.
Yeah, Lee Taylor, Rockhampton. Through you, Mr. Chairman. What I'd like to ask is that, you know, we've heard here this afternoon about the Gap Dam. We've also heard about the proposal, which I call the keyline system going out through the back there with the dams at the back. One of the things that hasn't been mentioned with the Gap Dam is the 70,000 acres of good quality cultivation and farming country that will go underwater if that dam does go ahead. The other thing is too with that dam, how do we get water back out into the Isaacs Plains and back up into the top end of the Dawson Valley and Callide Valley when it gets dry up there? Whereas with the dams in the keyline system, such as the Connors and the Nathan, we're going to be able to have water come down in its natural feed and be able to replenish those weirs to ensure that we've got water right through the year. Joe Bielka-Peterson years ago, and along with Neville Hewitt, who actually was part of devising all of these dams in the early days, they basically said that with that full system in play, and I know it'll take a lot of years to get it there, but by the same token, once we do get it there, we'll have an operation that will work very comfortably for all of the irrigators right down through the river and give all the irrigation country a chance to be used. Now, what I'd like to know is, how are you going to get water back out to those people from a Gap Dam down here at the lower end of the Fitzroy? Thank you.
Dominic or Rod, you don't have to respond. We can do the Tony Jones on Q&A and take things as a comment if you would prefer. But Dominic or Roger or anyone else.
Are they pumping gas from Rama to Gladstone?
Yeah, but the cost, Dominic, how much is it going to cost? We're
talking about water, mate.
No, we're talking about farming.
Lee, if we could just let Dominic.
We're only talking about, mate, I'm over all the costs. $18 billion wasted on a desalination plant in Melbourne. $18 billion. By 2040 of taxpayers' money, right? Billions of dollars wasted on the Queensland health payroll system. And you're worried about the cost of water. Thank you.
Well, we might keep going, Lee. If we have time at the end, we'll come back to you. But I want to give everyone a chance to speak.
Mate, do you want to say something about that? You're a water buyer.
Lee, I think the point's been made. It is. We do have to make the numbers stack up, and we've seen a number of presentations on that today. We had another speaker, Trevor, is it? Just there, Trevor.
Trevor Browning from Theodore. I probably cut my teeth in water like most people before they were born, but more so after I was born. I worked on the Emerald scheme on development, and I think that scheme took the Nathan Dam original plans and laid it over Emerald. As what Ralph was saying with the economics of it, look at Emerald through industrial and agriculture. What I don't want to see, I don't like talking behind politicians' backs, so that's why I got up early, is the Nathan started off in 20. It re-got done in the 60s, it got kicked off in the 90s again. Private enterprise made a lot of money out of it, and still nothing's happened. I hope this round does something in this area.
Good on you.
Thank you. We have a question there, Eric, I think, there, and we'll go in front of Eric next.
There's only two things I want to talk about. One of them I know nothing at all about.
Should be a politician.
I would like to congratulate the talkers. You've said a lot of very, very interesting things, and unfortunately I've probably forgotten about half of them. But the question I want to ask is, these coal mines and the huge amount of earth they shoot, why can't we use them as water reservoirs for drought times? They might be sitting there for 10 years before they need it, or longer. Why can't we use them for that? And the second thing is, yours, do you have maps available showing the areas which are suitable for agriculture and the catchment areas and all that kind of thing to do with the importance of this whole scheme? Do you have those, and are they available to the general public or on the internet?
Settle? Yeah. Okay, I can't comment on the coal. However, yes, all those maps are publicly available. Queensland Land Audit and the Queensland Globe are public documents. There was extensive drilling and soils mapping done on the Fitzroy, and my intestinal tract map showed you what was suitable for which crops on the Fitzroy, and it's very, very specific. The same can be said at a larger scale for other areas of the catchment. They're available currently on the RDA website. You can access that through the Growing CQ tab. Conversely, if you want to get hold of me after today, I am happy to send them to you. They're large files. To send them to you individually, it's no problem.
I'll get your email.
Thanks, Anne. Thanks, Eric. We were just going to go. Did you want to add to that? Yep. Sorry, Ken.
Just a quick one, Eric. The coal water in the pits, as it sits, it is toxic. It is toxic, but the mines do undergo a treatment process, and you just got to go to Mount Morgan to see that.
Yes, I thought it might be. The only thing is that with time, will it tend to clear itself?
Well, in the case of Oakey Creek, there's water out there, in large volumes of water in pit that has been treated, and that's better than drinking water. We can't find an economical way to get it to the farmers, but it is existing in the Oakey Creek mine. Thank you.
And in front of Eric there, sir.
Just 2 points.
Sorry, I should have said earlier, if you could just introduce yourself. Sorry, some of you
sorry,
know.
Greg Hutchinson. I'm an irrigator on the Dawson River near Mara. One thing that hasn't been addressed is the National Water Initiative pricing principles and the return on cost of capital and building these things. So it's all well and good the government putting forward money, but they still want a return on that capital, and ultimately that return needs to be paid for by the users of that water, be it agriculture, industrial, and to my thinking, once that comes into the picture, it just makes water too expensive unless there's a complete change in thinking of the government that, they're doing it for the greater benefit of society as opposed to just returning the cost of capital. The second thing is, at the moment, all the water in the Connors River, Eden Ban, Nathan, they're all tied up in infrastructure reserves. Essentially, that water is not usable until a dam is built. That water, to my knowledge, wants to be, if the dam isn't going to be built, that water needs to be released either to private investors who are willing to build the off-stream storages and make use of that water, whether it be on a permanent basis or on a temporary basis. I'd be keen to buy it on a temporary basis because I know Nathan Dam might be 10 or 20 years down the track, and in the meantime I've developed an irrigation infrastructure scheme capable of paying for itself, and in 20 years' time I may be able to afford the water out of one of those dams. So it's either, the decision needs to be made, if a dam's not going to be built, then that water needs to be released like they're doing up in the Gilbert and the Flinders, release it to private investors that do want to and are able to go ahead and develop that infrastructure that's required to make use of the water.
Yeah, they're excellent comments, Greg. I'm happy to deal with some of them, but any of the speakers want to go first? On the National Water Initiative principles and the pricing principles, it's an excellent point. We have been trying to, as a federal government, develop investment in dams and water infrastructure for more than, basically the whole time we've been in government, even before. And last year, Barnaby Joyce, who's the Agricultural Minister, convened a roundtable in Canberra to discuss these issues. And it was pretty clear from the contributions there, Greg, that your point is exactly right, that most agriculture will not be able to pay the capital costs of a dam and still be economic. However, we want to see agricultural grow in Australia. We want to see a strong primary production sector. And we, as a federal government at least, are willing to make a contribution to see that happen for the wider nation and indeed the world as well. So this $500 million fund that was mentioned by, I think, Anne, that the federal government's put aside is to do exactly that. Under the National Water Initiative, it does say we need to apply cost recovery principles, but it doesn't stop governments making a contribution to reduce the cost of capital, to meet regional development, agriculture, other objectives. I've moved up here to Central Queensland because I want to see this area go ahead. If you stand up on a building in Brisbane and look around, they've been the beneficiaries of massive amounts of public investment over time. And good luck to Brisbane. It's a great place. I grew up there. But we also need to invest in our regions too, and that's what this $500 million fund is for. It is not a free lunch, however. The water will not be free. It'll help reduce that price, hopefully to a point where it becomes more economic. We are building on what's happened in Tasmania. In Tasmania, over the last decade, they've had 2 lots of Commonwealth government investment where they've done exactly this. They've entered into a partnership with the federal, state governments and irrigators to buy the water, and it's been a contribution from each of those levels, part of which is through user charges, but also through government contributions and grants, and that's exactly the same type of approach we'd like to apply through this $500 million fund. It's not a $500 million fund for Central Queensland, it's a $500 million fund for the nation. So we've got to put our project through the beauty parade, and if it comes up being economic and ticking the boxes, we potentially can benefit from that investment. The second point you made is an excellent one too. It is more of a state government issue about the water resource plan. I believe there's around 70,000 megs in that strategic reserve at the moment in the Fitzroy Water Resource Plan. I'm sure Bill and Tony, who was here earlier, part of that reserve is for, I think, your urban water needs, and also part of it, I think, is for Gladstone's industrial needs. So they'll need to be considered. But there is about, I think Anne mentioned, 40,000 megs left after that. Do you want to make any? And that's a fair point. If we don't develop these resources, we should look at other ways of using that water.
I think what Mr. Hutchins is referring to is, I think what you're referring to, Greg, is that so we have strategic water in the system. So we assume the Nathan's built, and we assume the Connors is built, and we assume Dana Woodford is built. We allocate that water. And I think what you're getting at is if we don't build Nathan, and we're not holding it in a reserve, we should at least put the reserve that's been put aside for use, for future use, into the system now. So that's what you're saying? Yeah, right. So that would be a question for Sunwater.
Well, although in fairness to Russell, probably a question for the department, wouldn't it? Because is that right, Russell? The department. That's correct. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, you probably know, and I'm sure you guys would know, Greg and others, the Fitzroy Water Resource Plan was reviewed and finalised about a year ago, or okay. And how often it is reviewed? 10 years, right. It is a state government issue, but the point you make is an excellent one. So we'll know very shortly whether these projects go forward or not, and if they don't, I think, please get back in touch with us, and while it's a state government issue, I'm happy to progress that for you. Okay, we had other hands, I just can't remember who. John.
Hi, John Lever. I play backgammon a bit. There's a thing called an end game, where you plan a few moves ahead and you win. That's the end game. And I've been in Central Queensland now for 30 odd years, or since 1981, and I've watched many projects just fall apart. They've done all the research, done all the groundwork, got all the findings, everything's done, and no one sells the damn thing. It just seems to go nowhere. And if we look at Nathan back in early 90s, and then again in the 40s, and then again in the 60s, and look at the Connors. I canvassed for the Connors when I was going for government, and I thought it was just a year away, and it's still not there. And every time there's a delay, there's an escalation of the cost of enormous proportions. And now you're telling us we've got to get the money back, or we've got to find customers to buy the water before we can build the dams. And that's the difficult part, because every time there's a delay, it's harder. It's a darn sight more difficult. How can we now fast track this? This meeting's great. This should be the start of the fast track of coming to the end game.
Thanks, John. I'll just briefly respond. you're absolutely right about this meeting. This is very important. Don't underestimate how important it is that this many people have come out, because Michelle and Ken and I need to go back. We've got Josh here, which is great, but we'll certainly go back to Barnaby, the Prime Minister, and to Greg Hunt, who's involved as well as Environment Minister, and say, look, there are people here who want things to happen. Right? You do not get more than 100 people turning up to a meeting on a Wednesday afternoon to hear from politicians if there's not an issue. It's hard for us to get 4 or 5 people out usually to come and listen to us. So we're very thankful that you have come out, and that will help. That will help. On the customers issue, though, we're not going to build anything if nobody wants it. If nobody wants to use the water, it's not worth putting in hundreds of millions of dollars. And the only way we're going to know that people really want it is if they're willing to have skin in the game and pay some amount for the water. We're not saying it's going to be $2,000 a meg, which John is right, is probably unaffordable, but they have to have some skin in the game. And that's worked in Tasmania. Plenty of people have lined up in the Midlands in Tasmania. It's an amazing scheme. It's worth going if anyone is really interested in these schemes. It is a fantastic outcome, but irrigators have paid some contribution towards it, and I think it can work in other areas as well. Down the back, Ron.
It's Ron Bainish. I was born as the head of the Dawson catchment, and since I came to Central Queensland, I've owned the Connors River dam site. I've got an allocation of water out of the Mackenzie, and I've got one of the biggest allocations out of the barrage. So that's my background in water. There's lots of things that I'm very critical of that have said today, but the one thing that I would like to point out that nobody else has mentioned, and I think, Anne, you did say that you do have a soil map. Well, Bruce Forster did a soil survey at great expense and found 950 plugs of different soils from the Mackenzie and the Dawson joint junction down to the mouth of the Fitzroy. The biggest one we own, and I can tell you it's crap. It's the sort of soil you don't put water on. One of the biggest ones, the Gango, is one hill removed, and there's a bit of softwood soil there. But the only thing that you could think of growing would be some horticulture away in the hills. You've got the fastest flowing river on the east coast of Australia with banks that slump. It only slows down when it gets down to the Allocated Creek Junction. And you've got to stop this river, and there's nowhere to irrigate below the dam site, below the Gap Dam site. You've got to pump it 80 or 90 feet up onto the floodplain, and then your infrastructure's in danger of being destroyed. You've got to get off the floodplain to be safe. And no one can afford the water for agriculture in any dam that's going to be built these days. And I'll just point out that the water could be there. You drown some of the best country in the world. Foley Vale this year got 5 tonnes to the hectare without any in-crop rain. So you please yourself. You want to drown some of the best country in the world to irrigate some of the worst.
Was there someone else? Mary, up the front here. I don't know who it was. Sorry, Mary.
Thanks very much, and congratulations for today to our political leaders. I'm not a water expert, far from it, but I do know a little bit about lobbying. Capricorn Enterprise, in partnership with CQ University, prepared a submission to the federal government when the first draft of the Northern Australia Plan was released, and anything between the Tropic of Capricorn and Townsville out to the border was not in it. So the submission, we obtained 25 signatures from political leaders from all levels of government and all colours, chambers of commerce's, organisations similar to ours, from between Gladstone and Townsville and all the way out to the border. That letter was sent to the Prime Minister, and a week later Michelle Landry hosted Tony Abbott, who was the then Prime Minister, here, and he announced at that forum, and many people in this room were there, that he was hearing us and that he would be prepared to put Edenbound and Rookwood Weirs on his list of water infrastructure. The fact that the Edenban and Rookwood weirs are very, very close to the EIS process, and from the figures that Anne put up on the screen, could be constructed within or by 4 years' time. Is that right? By the time it goes through all of the... So there's a 5-year time frame. The fact that the Growing Central Queensland project, which includes Lower Fitzroy water infrastructure of Edenban and Rookwood, is supported by the 6 councils of CQUni. It's a project that is supported by the state government. It's a project that obviously is supported and auspiced by Regional Development Australia, Fitzroy Central West. And it's one of our priority projects at Capricorn Enterprise. And yourself and Michelle and Ken, I heard before, are supportive of it too. That is a lot of power behind about $500 million worth of infrastructure that we can secure right now if everyone sings from the same hymn book. But with all respect, Dominic, to your passion and the people that support you, I don't think anyone's saying you're wrong, or maybe some people are, but any other proposal like that is 50 years away when we've got these projects that can happen very, very soon. So everyone in this room needs to understand that disunity is death. And if the federal government get mixed messages from this region, we will blow our chances and stuff up this golden opportunity for Edenban and Rookwood and then Nathan and Connors. So, as I say, I know little about water, but I do know a bit about lobbying, and we are so close. Let's just not stuff it up.
Well said, Mary.
And Matt, can I have something to say?
Yep, go for it. Sorry, Tom.
Hello. Yeah, now listen, the only reason I'm pushing this gap dam is we've got the likes of Mary and Margaret and all the politicians saying we're going to have an international food bowl in the Fitzroy Basin. Now, Anne has said before that we're going to have 30,000 megalitres from the Rookwood weir. Now, if 30,000 megalitres is going to create an international food bowl, well, my name's John Travolta. Righto? So we're either going to have a food bowl to supply the Kern Arcade markets on a Sunday morning, or we're going to have an international food bowl. Now, I'm not here to say which one's the best, but are we going to have an international food bowl, or are we going to supply the Kern Arcade markets on a Sunday morning? And that's the only place I'm coming from. Right? Thank you.
Neil, I think we've got, just get you a microphone, Neil.
More people even stand up. Yeah, Neil Farmer, we're on the Fitzroy just up north of Rocky. A couple of issues there, great. Build infrastructure, terrific, needs to be done and needs to be recognised from a federal level that if we're going to boost agriculture, then the federal government has to get behind it and get amongst it. When we come back to recovering costs, if we're looking at $5,000 to $10,000 per megalitre to build it, 5% interest, $250 to $500 megalitre per year, interest alone. So if the government think, well, if they can recover $1,000 out of 5 to 10,000, well, it's 5 to 10% return. Realistically, if they're expecting to get any money back, they're probably pushing the verb uphill. The other thing with payment of the water, allocation-wise, we came to Learmonth 2006, paying 26 cents megalitre. Contract Sunwater then was signed, great nominal figure, a couple $100 a year. Since then, it's risen by 4,800% to $12.50, a bit up $12.50, and it's written by legislation. You know, we can't argue it, can't trade it, can't sell it, can't give it away. Can't give back Sunwater, they don't want it because they can't recoup any money on it as well. So if anyone's having assurance that this water is going to be worth something to them, they need to have the assurance that they're not going to be paying another 4,800% on top of what we're paying now. You know, we'll be paying $96 for a bottle of milk if that happened to our milk inflation. So that's one thing. Then also with mine water, okay, great, they're treating the water at the moment and it's coming out better than your tap water. When these mines shut, what's going to happen? 20 years down the track, we've dammed up mine overflow. So there needs to be some legislation, something put in place. When these mines shut, they're held accountable for years to come. And a slap on the wrist, $2 million fine is not going to prompt them to keep looking after these mines if that water is already toxic. The other thing we consider is, yeah, we're damming up water on the lower Fitzroy to provide agriculture in this lower area. The quality of soil down here and the area available compared to return on investment, putting the stream upstream storage and using up there, you're going to get far more bang for your buck by supplying water to everyone downstream from these upper catchments, sure. And yes, you know, soils is used to hold the stem on the ground and everything else can be supplemented on top of that, but we are still talking about an area where the amount of usable soil is pretty minimal compared to further upstream. My thoughts anyway.
Thanks, Neil. When you say upstream storage, you're talking Connors and Nathan? Yeah, okay. And there's two issues you raised, the pricing and the mining water. And I know you've studied the Tasmanian irrigation system closely, the one I mentioned. Can you give us any insights into what they're paying and what, I mean, the point Neil makes is a fair one about assurances that people who sign up to buy water are going to get a set price over a period of time. Sorry, Dominic, there's a mic there.
I'll get first go. So with the cost, I think we face this horrible trade-off, and so not a horrible trade-off, but a bit of a trade-off. Better soils are further upstream, but downstream, the lowest schemes have got more potential to supply into urban and Gladstone, urban and industrial, and the urban and industrial will essentially pick up a larger proportion of the cost. So the remaining water will then be cheaper for agriculture. So the downstream things, the downstream projects, I think will end up being more affordable for agriculture than the upstream ones, but the upstream ones have got access to much better soils. So I don't think there's any easy answer to this, apart from going back to what Mary said, that if you're looking at all the other factors, at the moment, in terms of the support from the government, funding being available, the downstream projects are in a closer position to starting than the upstream ones. So those are sort of some of the things that are out there. I don't know that there's any easy answer about exactly what is the best scheme, but these are the sorts of trade-offs that we've got to look at.
Yeah, go for it.
Neil, yeah, look, I've got to agree with what you say, and I've got to agree with what Lee says. And Dominic, I can see where you're coming from, and I think everybody in the room can. I'm a big picture person as well. I love dreaming, and so I like to do things on a grand scale. However, that said, I think, as somebody said, your vision might be 50 years away when we need it in a greater case. I think, to pick up on what Mary said, I think we've got to be united. The soils, the idea of having the dams, the larger dams up, releasing it down to the weirs further down, absolutely, totally, 100% agree. I think that's the answer for the system at the present time. But if in the future there's 1 million, 2 million people living here in Rocky, maybe we build the dam then and decommission some of the others because the need might be there. But I think at this stage, I think it would be absolutely crazy not to work together as a team and get these two projects up. Neil, as far as the water goes, mate, if you're getting it for $12, I think you're doing reasonably well. If I could get it for that, well, that's what we're paying. So, I think we all understand that's the rate, and I think you were getting a pretty good deal at 15 cents before. Yeah.
Did you have anything, I mean, in terms of that issue about the longer term security, is that something you've looked at, or have other schemes looked at?
I guess. Can you hear me? Okay. In terms of growing Central Queensland's perspective, we're talking about water today, but in the broader picture, we're not just looking at water, and we're looking at road and rail and transport and infrastructure, and it's great. We'll build some water infrastructure and potentially grow, enormous amounts of agriculture in Central Queensland, and then we've still got to get it to the marketplace on road and rail and trains and transport, etc. So it's part of that bigger picture. When we talk about the Tasmanian irrigators, they are already irrigating. They're accessing more water in new areas. Where we struggle, not we struggle, but where our challenges will lie on the Fitzroy is that it's not a laser levelled cotton to the horizon type environment. It's a mosaic of soils, and you're right, different soils type. Some very highly productive, some less productive. So it's about understanding the drivers in that Fitzroy system. It's about taking people from grazing to intensive agriculture. I can tell you right now, I have no idea how Mr. Hutchinson runs a farm. I run a few cows. They're worlds apart, okay? It's like telling a nurse to go and do some orthopaedic surgery. They're completely different. So for us, it's about that suite of skills to take farmers from grazing through to agriculture. It's about ensuring that the price of power and power infrastructure is reasonable so you can afford to irrigate. And it's about having access to the economic case studies so that you can make decisions around what you think you might grow. And fairly controversially, I will say, I don't think that who will be farming on the Fitzroy in 20 years will be grazing now, because the marketplace will decide how to use high value water and what to grow. It won't be you. So that's my response, I guess, to that. It's got to be about a whole of industry and market approach, not just building one thing. The other side of the water debate that I would be remiss, I noticed that there was some irrigators. Is Liz Alexander here? Somewhere? No? Anyway. So we can build new water infrastructure. Their view is that the current one that we have is leaking and it's inefficient and it's old, and we waste 60% of our water through that system. So why are we lobbying for new water infrastructure when the one that we've got's a little bit broken? So there's a whole lot of different views in water, and we need to be conscious and considerate of all of those when we look at water structure development across the region. That being said, I won't back away from Edenban and Rookwood. Politically, it's ready to go now. It has the funding and it has the will. The Gap Dam, I'm sorry, Dominic, 22 times Sydney Harbour at the end of the catchment. No other water infrastructure can be built on this system. If you build the Gap Dam, it takes all the water. Okay, there's nothing else. No more irrigation on Nathan, nothing on the Connors. The fish ladder would be 5 kilometres long to get to the top of the wall. These are just some of the environmental issues you need to think about, and the palatability when you're looking at a water proposal. So yes, Growing Central Queensland supports Edenban and Rookwood, but we also support balanced, environmentally sustainable whole of catchment development.
Yeah, Chris Hunt from Theodore speaking. I'd just like to I think that the government might be thinking as this as a more of a 80 to 100 year plan, more so even 20 years seems to me to be not that far down the track. So I think if they look at it in a longer term, in 200 years, a lot of these old weirs are been there for 100 years now, and they cost nothing now. So trying to get your return on your money in 5, 10, 15 years is just out of the question. I think we should be thinking it's an investment for our country. You know, it's a 200-year investment, so I think it's a no-brainer to go and do something like this because we all need it. Anyway, thanks for that.
Thanks, Chris. It was a bit of a tragedy that we didn't get some of these projects built during the mining boom. Connors, for example, was pretty close to actually. Russell, you had people on the ground. I remember when I was up there one day, ready to build it, because the mining companies were willing to pay big dollars, and really big dollars, for the water. We lost that opportunity. Unfortunately, because if they'd built it, mines would go for 20, 30 years, and then we'd still have the dam there for many years after that. But we've got to now work with what we've got and build a case with the demand we've got in the system. There's a couple over here on my left. Chris, do you want to go to this gentleman here? Because Trevor's already had a go. We'll come back to Trevor. Blue shirt, I think dark blue shirt there.
Yeah, Mike Wagner. I've been farming out at Springshire area since '64. Bought a little block just out of town 5 years ago. We're just harvesting chickpeas now as we speak, and there's certainly no problem with the soil types below rocky on the flats. Everyone sort of, there was a misconception or what, that crops won't grow to the south of rocky. It's only 2k from the CBD. The other thing, water is gold. We all know that. Now, common sense has got to prevail. If you're going to lose too much country or the major dam, that common sense and politics don't mix. We all know that. But surely it's up to us to force the issue that it can be done. The other thing that hadn't been mentioned, or was mentioned briefly, about the Ord scheme. Now, the money's been socked into that to be a white elephant. The only one's ever going to make money out of it's Chinese, because they'll finish up flying their bok choys out of China, over to China. The freight, inward freight and outward freight are killing the Ord scheme. I've got a bloke working for you right now, he used to grow mangoes there, and he went out the back door and he explained exactly what the problem was. These blokes at Sunwater don't help with their bloody charges and everything else. Get your sticky fingers off it. It's a public utility. Don't forget that. It's a public utility being paid for by taxpayers. The only reason we went wrong after the Fairbend Dam, the next day should have been building the next one. That's my impression on that anyway. But getting back to Rocky, 300 kilometre radius of Rocky, more cattle than Northern Territory. I had a discussion with Graham Acton before his unfortunate demise. If he was still alive, that major feedlot would have gone ahead. Don't worry about that. The obvious thing is, you've got 2 abattoirs. There's so many things can happen around Rocky. Chilled beef, straight out of port or fly it out. The little block I'm farming there, the Chinese actually grew, that was the market gardens for Rocky back in the 1800s. So it produced then and it's still producing. It's all here. The only thing we need is a decent road infrastructure to port for AB triples. And you don't have to spend all the fuel tax money, but put a damn portion that should be put on the roads and put a heap of overtaking lanes. That's pretty simple. We've got to have access to port, access to meatworks here with at least B doubles and at road trains, and 5 years' time they'll still be talking about it. It's all here. It's all here. That is worth so much to us, and with an adjunct of water with it, there's just nothing stopping this area. Thank you.
I'd like to start with Michelle. We recently had a roads forum in Rocky, which discussed some of the issues. Michelle?
Yeah, we had Warren Truss, the Deputy Prime Minister, in Rocky a couple of weeks ago. And it was first of 3 forums in Northern Australia, and Rockhampton was fortunate enough to have it, discussing about the beef roads. So there's $600 million, that's the figure, isn't it? Yeah, $600 million going towards roads. And we've been asking for submissions for that. I suppose one of the particular things that a lot of the beef producers have spoken to us about is in Rockhampton itself, with the fact that the difficulties of getting those B doubles out to the meatworks. So there was talk of going over the new bridge, and then I'm not quite sure where the road's going, but back down onto Lakes Creek Road, so that they don't have to turn as much, and they don't have to unhitch. So that's causing a lot of problems out at Gracemere at the sale yards, and so that is something that we need to discuss. But that forum was very well attended. We would have had about 50 people there, and it was people from all over the country. So what we want to do with these beef roads is actually, with that money, get the councils and also get the Queensland government and, well, the other governments in Northern Australia working with us, so that we can make the most out of that money, that it can go as far as we possibly can. So, you know, if you do have suggestions of where you would like to see these roads, you know, fixed to a higher standard, so that you do have access in the wet season, just drop Ken or I an email, or Matthew's office, and we can send that on to the Beef Round Table. Yeah, so there's another one over in Western Australia soon, and one up in Darwin at the end of the year. So they're still looking for submissions for that. So that's something that, you know, we're certainly aware of, and we would like to see that as a starting point, because, you know, 600 million probably doesn't go that far on roads when you look at 170 million for Yeppen out here. So that is something that we are working on.
Yeah, I'll just add a quick point on that too. That $600 million is also part of that Northern Australian plan, and I see some of you, we do have some flyers or brochures about our Northern Australian plan, the federal government's plan. We're mainly talking about water today, but roads is another big element of it. The CSIRO have developed this quite innovative tool and quite amazing tool to assess where beef go across our roads through a year and through over the last 10 years. They're using the NLIS data to do that, and they can bring up on a Google map where the bottlenecks are and where the pressure points are in our system. One of which they've identified is the Gracemere decoupling issue. and we're quite hopeful on their current numbers at least that stacks up, and we might be able to use some of that $600 million to fix that issue at Gracemere. We had one there. Behind you, Colette. Oh.
Thanks very much. My name's Jason. I'm the owner and director of iAssist. We're an IT company. And I actually don't know a lot about water, and I don't really know a lot about both plans and the feasibility of both. But for where I'm sitting, we're currently looking after around 3,500 businesses for their IT needs. And we're seeing businesses collapse, and we're seeing businesses grow, and we're seeing a general footprint of the area. And what's really important for me is the community, and I'm seeing that the largest export we've got in Australia at the moment is money to China. We're buying, everyone's buying on eBay. We're spending massive amounts of money, and we're sending now more money than anything else overseas. And of course, with our economy the way it is, that means less jobs. That means that we're not actually sending anything really overseas other than money. And I look at Central Queensland, which I really believe in. I believe in our whole area, and I look at what we've got in resources, and I think, you know, what can make the change and what can make the change quickly. And in my business in IT, we're always looking at merging technologies and what the next big thing is, so that we're always on the game. And the next big thing is the free trade agreement, as far as where I'm sitting, and I'm seeing that we could be trading with China and other countries very quickly. And we look at China, and China have got lots of resources, and we look at the people in Rockhampton that manufacture things now like Dobinson Springs, which we should all be proud of. And Dobinson Springs, you know, great company, but I can't see China buying springs from Australia, because that's something they're good at. They're good at copying things. They're good at manufacturing just about anything. The one thing they really need is food, produce, and all the things that we can do. And I look at that right now and go, look, we're clever. We're Central Queensland. We've got everything we need. We just need to boost that and do more overseas. And I look at the two opportunities on the table, and Dominic, I hear you. I hear what you're saying, big picture stuff. I love big picture stuff. But I think what Rockhampton needs is not necessarily what's right, but what's right now. I think we need to take what's nearly on the table now, grab it, and I think that we should all look at what's going to improve our local economy.
Thanks, Jason. Dominic?
Yeah, I'd just like to have one last word. Everyone's saying I'm a dreamer, I'm a big picture man. If we were having this conversation in 1976 when the feasibility study was done for the gap, and everyone would have been sitting there, here's that Doblo, a big dream, a big picture man. $100 million for the full-blown gap in 1976. How would you like to have that sitting out there today for our children? I'm a dreamer. $100 million back in 76. I'll keep dreaming. Thank you.
And Claire, we've got time for probably a few. Chris, probably got time for a few more. So, okay, but Claire, you're first, and I think, sorry, Chris, the lady down the back has been very keen, so we'll go to her next up.
My name's Claire, I'm from Regional Development Australia. What I'm really interested in is, across all of the different projects, we've heard that we need to build a business case. So we've got a lot of people that are going to potentially access the water here in the room today, and we'll go back and talk to the different communities when you go home. So what I want to know from the people that are on the panel, if you are interested, if anyone in the room is interested in accessing the water that are from the potential projects that we have on the table, who do they go and talk to? Who is the key person? We've got obviously all our federal members, we've got Johnston Sunwater, and is a very key contact here. Who do they go and talk to about what they would like as a potential allocation? What do they put on the table? How do they do that as a potential building of a business case to help stack it up and say, this is where my property is located, this is how much I'd like, this is, you know, what I'd potentially like to grow. How does that happen?
It's a very good question. I think Anne, or Russell, you want to go first? Okay.
So as I've during my presentation, I had talked about the development of the business case. So in each of the projects, we're getting to a point where we need to determine whether we're going to proceed with them immediately or put them on the shelf, and that will depend on demand. So we're going to transition from an investigation type phase into potentially a delivery phase if we have sufficient demand. So to answer your question, you can contact me directly. I'll have some cards here later. I'm more than happy to receive them. Anne, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just briefly, please. Okay, so Sunwater and Gorb are the proponents of Edenban and Rookwood, so they will own the infrastructure and will be selling the water, so that's who we need to talk to about pricing down the track. Where Growing Central Queensland can help you with Department of State Development, Department of Agriculture, is what's understanding your price point, what and where is your business, and would you like to change what you're doing, and at what point would you do that? So in the next couple of weeks, we will be coming around and talking to landholders on Rookwood and Edenban and trying to understand exactly that. So at what point will you may not want to change anything at all. You may want to keep doing what you're doing. There's no problem with that. But what's your price point? What's your crop? What's your option? What's your business structure? What's the type of capital you need and the style of capital you need to enable that to happen? So that information will be collated, and that will be used as part of the business case as well, I'm hoping, for Sunwater and Gorb.
Hey, thanks, Anne. We're just going to go down the back first and then up to the front.
Laurel Fabro, Central Queensland University. There are two essential quality elements of water in the room today. One's quantity, the other is quality. Now, we're quite different in terms of Tasmania, because the longer you store water around the Tropic of Capricorn or the Tropic of Cancer, water quality declines. That's why whether it's mine pits, whether it's large dams or the like. The longer it's stored, the worse it gets. One of the real problems that we're seeing worldwide with the super dams, for example those that have been built in Brazil, is that the organisms that then grow and grow in large amounts, if it's an end of catchment, produce water that threatens the health of both of the people, the animals, and whatever they're growing. We've got cases now where people don't want to take the water because it's of no value to them. Now, it's mainly around the Tropic of Capricorn, Tropic of Cancer that's happening. So we have some other countries to look at to see some of the potential problems of the super dams. Thank you.
Okay. We are just going to go down to the front of the room. Sorry. Thanks, Narelle. And we are getting to the front of the room here. We'll try and rip through. If people could try and be as quick as they can now, because there are a few people still who haven't spoken, and I will give the mic to those who haven't spoken first, and we can try and get through everybody.
My name's Graham Farmer. I'm a landholder with my family on the river. We own 21 kilometres of river frontage just north of Rocky. I spent 20-something years up on the top of the Fitzroy Catchment north of Clermont, and I reckon I moved, I was going to move on to somewhere where there's water. Came to the Fitzroy in '94, and I've been doing my damnedest to make a living since. We put in pivots, and we really can't make the figures stack up. Presently on the Fitzroy, there's something nudging 20-odd pivots that are sitting still. Now the question is why? Why? And it's not the cost of water, because most of those pivots are in the area where the water is unregulated, so the water's free. My son Neil mentioned a while ago about the cost of water. I don't think the room understood or got the message that we're talking about Part A and Part B. If there's a Part A that's gone up to 4,000 plus percent, in other words, that's the piece of paper gives you access to. It's not the actual cost of the water. So presently, some years ago we decided all we're doing was subsidising the Stanwell Power Station. We're not using the water. It's not viable to pump at this stage. So we decided to no longer pay our bill to Sunwater. We presently owe them 70 or 80 grand. Probably go to jail eventually when they chase us, but I don't care. The point is,
federal issue.
The point is we are subsidising the Stanwell Power Station. There are two other landholders. There's three allocations on the whole Fitzroy River that are in the guarantee area, downstream from Edenban. The other two parties are also in the same boat that have refused to pay. So the three of us combined owing Sunwater
150 odd grand. We've tried everything in our power. We've taken to the local pollies, the Sunwater, you know, we've met with them all. And it's just like talking to a post. We can get no relief. We can't walk away from it. We can't even give it to our dog, our allocation. We're locked in. We're totally locked in. And it all goes back to when with Peter Beattie, when he decided to go into user pays policy, with user pays. And so that's why the money, the cost of Australia is so high. And that's going to continue. But on another point, with the river itself, I think we're talking about shortage of water. It's not a shortage of water that's the problem up to this point. It's a shortage of people. It's a shortage of people with passion. There's plenty of people on Fitzroy with passion, but they're passionate about growing cattle. They're not farmers. So I think what needs to happen, and we need to focus on the people, is that there's got to be a reason for the people that are existing there to use the water. And either someone's going to come in and offer them big bucks to buy them out, or they're going to be forced to, through economic reasons, to pump water that they don't want to do anyway. So it's not going to work with the present people that are there. In my observations in time, it's a common thing. There's really no need to reinvent the wheel. What you do is you look at what things have been successful in the past. And I think everybody in the room will agree with me in saying that the things that have worked in the past are things that Joe put in place with dealing with water. He built the dams and everything else followed. But when he built the dams and created the water, part of it was giving people with passion the opportunity to utilise it. And with the Emerald Irrigation Scheme, the Burdekin, the further up north, there was always a plan that followed up. Likewise to the Brigalow Scheme. Like without Joe and the Brigalow Scheme, where would Rocky be today? It wouldn't be the beef capital of Australia. So look at what he did to make it work. He made opportunities available for people with passion that wanted to do the hard yards and be successful. So he had ballots and that sort of thing. I was one of them. I drew a book. And there are other people. Ron up there was another one. So it was not only a matter of making things happen. It was also part of the plan was to give people the opportunity, the right people that want to have a go, that's prepared to do the hard yards. That's what's missing on the Fitzroy. It's not water in the short term. If people wanted to pump it, they'd be doing it now. People allocations. They're not doing it. Why? Because it's not economical. Even with free water, it's not economical. So, to get out there and want to put all this water in and expect to have 2,100 jobs, who's going to be employing them? It's not going to be me. It's not going to be the other landholder, the Fitzroy River. So, really, what needs to, I think, it needs to happen is we need to focus on that side of it. It's got to work together. It's not just creating the water and then hoping it's going to happen, because it won't. The right people have got to be given the opportunity to make it happen. Thank you.
Charlie, you want to have a quick response if you can, Charlie?
Thanks, Matt. Look, that was the thrust of my talk. A lot of it, it's not when I heard Anne say, "How do you get the water?" They're going to do a survey. I can tell you now, Anne, it's not going to go that well because that's the old way. The old way doesn't work. We've got to get, as I said, we've got to get a bit of innovation here. And what I can imagine you'd do is you invite for example, the best banana farmer in Australia down to a room like this, and we sit down, we analyse banana farming up north. Can we do it here? And you might even get that guy really interested to spend here because he can say, wow, there's a lot of opportunity here, and I can spread my risk around. So using him as an example, you could do that with a plethora of different industries and crops, and try and get the interest up before the water comes out. So, but look, I totally know where you're coming from because we've seen it all. We've seen the Ord, we've seen an Emerald, we've seen on the river, we've seen it disasters where the water's out there, but nobody can make it work because they don't have the skills and they try hard, and it's painful. I can tell you, everybody knows it's painful trying to work out what works. So let's get a bit innovative and try and do it differently this time.
Thanks, one here. We might just do a bit of a count. Who wants to ask a question? Because I've only got 10 minutes at max and probably less. We've got one here, there, Jared, 4. Okay, we might, Trevor, we'll see if we get time to come back to you, but those 4 haven't spoken, so we'll do those 4, and then we'll see what time we've got left, Trevor. Okay.
Thanks, Matt. I'm one of those guys across the river from Graham and Neil and Steve and those fellas. We've got 5 or 6 Ks, and I'm pretty new into the game in the last few years, but we're one of those guys straight across the river. We're looking at opportunities. I can see, I mean, I've got to congratulate everyone who's put their effort into today, because we've got the politicians, we've got Scott from the uni, we've got everyone supporting to pull together, and I think it's a great opportunity. You'd never get this in any other region. And I'm one of those guys with a passion. A bit like Charlie, I just want to get in and make it happen, because we need an opportunity to make it happen. We actually need to see the benefits there before we invest. So we've got the potential to do stuff, but what we're finding is a bit like Neil was saying earlier, our soils aren't right for it. We've actually got to do the investment in the soils first. I think that's where Scott comes in with his team of scientists. We need to actually use the university at first step to actually assess the soils requirements, what we need. We put projects together to the council 2 years ago now, it's gone nowhere, to form a compost program to actually compost all the green waste and all the raw materials in this region, to put that back on the lands to develop this whole corridor. That's gone nowhere yet because the passion's not there. You know, we've got potential to do all this stuff to make it happen in this region, but we need to get all those bodies together and all singing from the same book. And I think council is going to be key to it, whether it's Livingston or Rocky or both. That's a really important step to actually develop this agricultural agenda. But then we also need the farmers, the graziers together to actually say, yeah, we know it's going to work because we've done the economics on it. That's where John comes in. We need Anne there supporting us all. I didn't know who to talk to. I wouldn't have had a clue who to actually ring up and say, who do I talk to if we want to look at this whole process. It's been going on for a few years now. I remember 7 or 8 years ago that the whole Fitzroy food corridor, I think it was called way back then. There was a big write-up in the paper and it was all promoted, and that's when Dominic started his talk as well, and went nowhere. It just folded. So I actually take my hat off to the fact that we've got all these people here today. I didn't really even get here, so I apologise to Matt for not reporting it earlier. But in reality, we've got to make this work because it's an opportunity that we can make happen for CQ, for Fitzroy region, that we never get another opportunity for, I agree. But we've actually got to get some ducks lined up, and that's the university working with us. Maybe there's a big bucket of money got to go to the uni to get the staff on board to actually make that happen.
You got Scott's support, yeah.
But in Matt's case too, I mean, getting the politicians behind us, that's great. But I think the soil's the first step, and then the water quality issues that came up earlier, and then the third thing is going to always be the cost of pumping. Neil and Graham have been talking to me for a while now about the fact that they can't afford to pump. Electricity prices are so bloody high, you just can't afford it. So we've actually got to get that, either a solar system or we've got to get some sort of a value add that the farmer can actually utilise it. So guys, I congratulate you for being here, and I think it's fantastic, and Matt, great stuff, but we need to get some of that lined up first.
Thanks, mate. Thank you. And Jared down the back.
About 15 years ago, I looked at putting a hydroponics unit in, and it fell over because of water quality. Couldn't use river water at all. Now, the other thing to Dominic, I live at Edenban, Jared Milray. I've worked with the crew on the feasibility study to the Gap Dam. It fell over because of a big fault line that the river runs back out to sea above the dam site. Some of that fault line was found out in Kunrarara and further out. One of the drilling rigs for oil shale lost 500 feet of drilling rod down one shaft because of that fault line. So, and they found a lot of river water there. And that goes above the weir. And the other thing is the costing of the Edenban weir was done several years ago. And since then, people have been telling me that the costing could be 2.5 to 3 times as much as what they've said it's going to cost. That worries me.
Thanks, Jared. Did you want to respond there, Russell?
Sit here and do nothing.
So you're correct. It's been some years since the cost estimate for Eden Van Weir has been done, but when it was done with an appropriate allowance for contingency and the things that might happen during the investigation phase. So it's now some years since it's been done. We know a lot more because we've done a lot more investigation work. We're now starting to appreciate more fully what our commitments will be under the EIS. So yes, we are going to re-estimate the cost of the Eden Van Weir and the other projects as we get closer to understanding fully all of our commitments, which means what commitments we need to make during the EIS process. So with respect to anticipating 2 to 3 times the cost, that's news to me. Certainly not my expectation.
What's the expected? Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take that on board, Jared. One thing we've certainly discovered is the road costs have come down considerably. Yep, and South's come in or over $100 million cheaper. So I don't think it's completely true to say costs have gone up in the last few years. They were very high during the mining boom, but with the de-escalation of that, some construction costs are actually coming in very efficient at the moment. Last, I think, contribution, and we'll wrap up.
Yeah, I'm Neil Dunphy at Yagango. We're on the Rookwood Weir. I don't know the Eden Van one, I don't know much about that one. I'm more concerned with our place. 10 years, 15 years, 20 years ago, they started these ideas. It was proposed by 2 people at Yagango about the Rookwood Weir to go to 9 metres. 9 metres kept it within its banks, didn't worry anybody. Then since then it's gone 15 metres, now it's gone 19 metres. Well, at home, at 19 metres, it makes the property unviable because we're cut in half. Also, we lose our best production country. It's actually surrounded by water. I'll be able to bloody casino licence out in the middle of the river because I've got a big patch out there, 300 hectares. That'll be surrounded by water. And everyone's telling me, I read in the paper all the time, Michelle's on it, it's shovel ready, this big weir. Well, it's about time someone could come up and saw the property owners and start talking compensation if they're going to build these things. We've heard nothing. Like everyone says, everyone's been informed what's going on. Yeah, we have. We've heard from the media, but no one's actually come up to us and said where the water's going to go to, how much water's going to be there, and get our side of the story where we lose about 1,500 acres of country out of. At the moment, we're going through a partnership split. We'll lose 1,500 acres out of 6,000 acres. We'll be up in the bloody Rosewood Hills of the Wallabies. That's what we'll have left of our good production country. So when they come and start talking about compensation, they look at the land. Oh yeah, we compensate you so much an acre for your land. They have to look at the proper, the money we make off that bit of land compared to the rest of the property as well. And no one's come and saw us. And I'll go back to Graham and then fellas. The cost of we've got an allocation in the river. We asked Ergon Energy to put a swirl line down to one of our sheds, 4K, $135,000. Now, if you're talking irrigation, you're talking 3-phase. You can triple that cost. The bloody bank would chase you out the bloody door with a bloody, jigger if you went and asked them to put a loan bloody main, to go irrigation. Because the cost of it is just not viable. And you talk about all these big companies overseas got millions and millions and billions of dollars to invest. They aren't going to invest in something that's going to cost them bloody money. That's my point. People have got to realise the Fairbairn Dam was built. Then the industry come. It's time the Commonwealth Government and the State Government learnt these lessons. You build the bloody thing first, the bloody industry will come with it. It's no use trying to get the money to build it first, but no one wants to take a bloody, dark corner and say, oh, if we put the money over there, we might get our return. You build it first, then the industry will come. That's my point.
Thanks very much for that. And I know Ken, I and Michelle have been out to Rookwood a few years ago now, but and we did have some kind of an afternoon tea there or something. So, but you're right, we need to keep you in consultation. And look, I can only speak for myself, but I think my colleagues would agree. We would not support anything which sees a reduction in people's property values. There needs to be proper compensation. I think Russell did talk a little bit about some of the purchases made on some of the government's made on some projects. It will be a Queensland government matter, but no, we certainly won't support any money that doesn't properly take into account the impact on landowners.
Where does 19 metres come from?
Russell, do you want to?
Yeah, to be honest, I need to go back to the figures, but that sounds quite large to me.
The 18th meeting at Gagango 3-4 months ago.
So it's,
and all of a sudden you've got the 19th meeting. Board there. So it's come from somewhere. It didn't get no better than ourselves.
We might let Russell respond because then we do have to wrap up.
Well, first of all, I'd like to apologise on behalf of Sunwater and Gorb if we haven't provided enough consultation to you now. Certainly, I'd like to talk to you after this meeting. So certainly, if you're sounds like a key stakeholder and we want to keep you up to date. So please, I'd like to track you down after this. The thing about weirs is they're generally designed such that they drain out during a flood. So, you know, the afflux, so the difference between the headwater and the tailwater during a flood event, is 300 millimetres. So generally landholder impacts are smaller with weirs than it is to dams. That's not to say that there is none. So certainly I'd be keen to have further discussions with you, and obviously if you're being impacted, compensation is part of the package.
Thank you very much for that. I think Russell did say he'll have his contact details available for anyone after this who wants to stay in touch. Thank you again for coming. I just want to ask Michelle to come up and wrap up this evening, and thank you very much.
Yes, look, thank you everybody, and thank you to our experts over here. We couldn't do it without you, and that's what part of this consultation is about, that we do have to have the experts from the government departments here, the scientists, obviously the university as well, because, you know, it's all very well for us to push these, but we do have to have the science and the business plan to back it up. But look, I think it's been fabulous that we've had something like this in Rockhampton, and we want to continue pushing this, but we want all the stakeholders to come on board too, and people to, you know, keep feeding in the information to us. But I think that a project like these is only going to be great for Central Queensland. So we still need to, you know, keep going, but work together, because a community that works together is better than a divided community, that's for sure. I'd like to thank Scott and his team for putting this on this afternoon. Central Queensland University is always wonderful and helps everyone in the community, and I do appreciate the support that you do give all of us, and it's been a great afternoon. Yeah.
Sorry, sorry,
No,
I'm
you're right, you're right.
you got your 2 minutes. Yeah, I'm going to have another 2 minutes, and just say I was very taken by what you said. Look, the university is a great resource. We are doing great research. Laurel that spoke a minute ago, she is one of the leading people in the world on algae and algae blooms. They fly all over the world to deal with water quality and algae. We heard about the cost of pumping water. We've got Professor Peter Wolfs, one of the leaders in power generation, renewables. There's a resource there. We've got the agriculture stuff. I sometimes worry, you know, we're doing stuff in novel crops. We're growing a lot of tequila over on the other side of the road. A great, better than sugarcane even for producing ethanol. We've got all this stuff going on in the university, and I just worry that we're not making the contact with and the engagement with the people that can really make it happen. I mean, in fact, you could say there's more than enough research in agriculture. The problem is implementation of that. And I'd really like to look at how we can work, perhaps through Grow CQ, to actually form something that makes what we're doing, all the eggheads in our laboratories, actually practical and makes a difference. So I'd really like to work with people to see how we do that.
Well, thank you very much, Scott. And look, I'm a huge advocate for Central Queensland University. We have a bit of a battle sometimes up north with JCU, and I'll just quickly, before we finish, tell you a little story. On the Northern Australia Committee. We went up to Townsville recently at JCU, and I introduced myself to one of the Deputy Vice-Chancellors up there, and I said, I'm Michelle Landry, the member for CQUni, and they go, we know who you are. And I thought, Okay, but that's all right. It's all about Central Queensland University as far as I'm concerned. But look, thank you everyone. We have appreciated the input. We've all learnt heaps, and we will continue to go on with this, but we want community consultation as well. And thanks for Matt and his office for organising this. And thank you to all our wonderful staff that have been around the room that have put a lot of work into all this. So we do appreciate the support from everyone. Thank you.
Just to say too, we have this room until about 5:30. We'll be signing up, so if you'd like to stay and carry on the conversation, please feel free to do so.
Oh, really? Sorry, I just gave you someone else's name there. Yes. So, yeah, we'd love to come about it again. Thank you very much.
How are you, Ross? Steve Farmer. Hey, Steve, how are you? Good. You guys, you know what's going on with our later and whatever?
Yeah, we've met with Anthony Greer. We have to get something for Stephen's.
I'll get to his card, mate. I don't want to get money to buy. I'll talk to you.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that.
But yeah, we're split subdivision. We've got 370 ag, 1,000 next door brother. We're up here. Let it back to Anthony Greer yesterday. Four payments that were made. And negotiate the terms whether it's been subsidised. But our big thing is, yeah, we've got some support and Steve will pay his share of the allocation charges each year from themselves. Again, we've been about to get this trying to get some negotiation of these charges on board because
I mean, Sunwater don't set the charge.
That's right. Again, with this allocation.
Well, I'm more than happy to have a discussion with Anthony on the details. So your name is? Sorry.